Didn't fit me.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir.
What's up?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. How you doing? All right.
Every now and then.
He's got your wife, but this is guy with your brother, he's brother. Still, Brad, you really want my hand, don't you?
Oh, got a table here, sir. I don't know anybody gonna sit there or not. They don't, I'm gonna move over.
Please don't focus on me.
Yeah.
Thing. But even then, it might be a couple.
Well, sort of, Joe, never really set this out about it. You know, what my master says, you know, back then.
Let me see what I can do.
I don't know, but it's, it's good for that. Really, there are a lot of people. That's why I do like that and stuff right here. You basically. Really nice.
I want to find that quote.
A lot of people like this.
Yeah, you
always get to. Nationally, locally.
Attention, everyone, we're back in open session, and Bradley, we're gonna pick up right where we, left off.
Yes, sir, absolutely. So when we left off before lunch, I was explaining the kind of how we would like to propose doing the PPA a little differently this fiscal year, so that it affects all road classes similarly. What I've provided to you as a handout, it is a visual that shows exactly which true up they're color coded for which true you have one and they have one. And so you'll see exactly what it was per month from this. These were on the wholesale power bill, as cost on the wholesale each month. And so you see that some of those riders overlap fiscal year, rider 122 and 123 for about 24 months due to the size of those riders. And this amount that you see here, 4.9, 3.8 million, that's our portion of the cost. So that's kind of where we're at. So as you see, we're here in March of 26. Next month, April, is when we'll receive that credit, which is the debt fund release, and the fiscal year 24. The rider 124 true up, how they cancel out with a net credit. So that's going to be on our May bill for April wholesale. So, any questions on that truck visual?
So say that one, sorry. So you said the rate increase starts in April, but the first bill will be in May.
That's correct. So the rate increase starts in April for energy used in April. We'll see that on the May bill. That's when we'll have that credit. It'll also be the first month of the 4.5% boogie increase. And so that credit of 717 will come out at one time. And then, like I said before, we expect 560,000 approximately of increase in cost in April, the May bill, the June bill, and the July bill for April, May, and June.
Excuse me, one more question.
Sure.
Okay. So along that line, are you estimating an average amount for an average bill increase? I mean, you know how we do those calculations without this, you know. Because, you know, yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's the next slide.
All right.
But yet, so not specifically for that April, May, June timeframe though, because of the credit, it's a wash to our benefit, and the credit's a little more than the cost, so it's a wash. But moving forward, so this is the next sheet. It's in the presentation I provided to you, handouts. And so I broke this into.
Pause this for 1 second.
Sure.
Possible to turn on the light, because I can't see that good now, maybe some people in that audience. Yes, much better.
Okay, so I'm breaking this into two comparisons. This first comparison, again, we're in March. So I'm using March, data, March rates for some of the others. And this is comparing to investor owns. Okay, this is not our Nakempa members, peers. And so you'll see in this first column, this is our base rate, what we have published. That was effective July 1st. That includes the increase for last year, that 4% across the board. That's our base rate that we're having right now. All right, the second column is that base rate with the PPA that we put in place in October. So you can see that the average bill for 1,000 kilowatt hours of usage a month on a residential customer, our current base rate is about $110. Now, that's including load management credits. Okay, so I mentioned that load management program earlier. That's an opt-in credit that you can choose as a customer. If you include those load management credits, we're about 110 with our base rate. The 0.8 cent PPA that we put in to capture the true up that was supposed to be paid by the rate stabilization fund increased that average 1,000 kilowatt hour bill to 117, about 7%. Okay. It's actually about a 6% increase here, 7% collective. So that at the top, you'll see I have the facility charges. I know we talked about facility charges earlier today, but you'll see that our base facility charge to have an active service is $30.75 a month. So then what you'll see in the green are our two nearest investor-owned competitors outside of our system. Duke, their average 1,000 kilowatt hour, they got a lot of riders. It's very complicated. Their bills are very complicated. We pulled the data from the Utilities Commission website, kind of solidifies it and condenses it. But you'll see that over our base rate, not the rate with the PPA, because the PPA is temporary. Duke, over our base rate that's published today, is about 52% higher for 1,000 kilowatt hours. So they're considerably higher. Dominion, not quite as high, okay, about 26% higher at 137. And that's, if you'll notice, I've got the list, I've factored everything in for March, but you'll see here that they have rates that change throughout the year based on the period of the year. Okay, so they're like, Dominion has an October to May rate and a June to September rate. All right, so that's using their October to May rate, 25% higher. Edgecombe Martin, 46% higher than our base rate, and Halifax EMC, 36% higher than our base rate. So the published rate, the rate that y'all approved last year with the cost of service that went up by 4%, that's this line here. Our PPA kind of effectively makes it this line here, this column here. And even still, we're still way below our investor-owned competitors.
And so these are the current rates right now, the current sit today. And it's kind of news to me because I thought we were 20% less than big, but you're saying we're 50, almost 52% less than what a residential, do, our residents pay 52% less than a Duke resident pays.
For 1,000 kilowatt hour use on a residential rate, that's the difference. And again, Duke has a lot of riders that go, so if you just factor these kilowatt hour charges in, there's more to it. You can talk to anybody that's got, that's on the Duke system, and you'll see on their bill, there's a lot of riders that add to that base. So if you're back mapping it, you're gonna say, well, that's not that much difference, but it is, because there's additional riders on top of it. But that's your collective bill for 1,000 kilowatt hours.
For percentage wise, I never realized we were that much lower than. Yeah.
And this is, again, this is investor owned. So I want to make clear, this is not a recommendation. I'm not recommending this rate increase, as far as to make that clear, but I did want to put something up there so that you could see a number. Okay, this far column is I call it theoretical rate adjustment. All right, we're not to the point to make a formal proposal yet because we're waiting on some stuff. But even with a 15% increase over where we're currently at, you can see we're at 126, and we're still considerably less than our investor-owned peers close by.
And I'd like to just chime in and say, to kind of bring it full circle, that 15% that he's showing there was what I plugged into the initial presentation for the overall, recommendations.
So just to be clear, because you did say a lot of riders and who has, is this apples to apples for the same service that the end user will receive?
Yes, sir. It's pretty close. Now, for example, these utilities don't always have load management programs like we have. So, keep in mind that we got, I think it's about $17 per credit that you can get to lower your bill. But we got a note here that they're calculated using weighted average, and they may contain riders and stuff that they have in place. But yes, absolutely, it should be an apples to apple comparison.
Every attempts to make.
Every attempt to make the apples to apples. And so again, this number, this 15% number, and again, I want to make sure we know it's not a formal recommendation, but there is some math that goes behind this number. Okay, as I mentioned before, when we were looking at fiscal year 27, these are the four things. When we're looking at our operating budget, and specifically when it comes to the rate making piece of it, the big portion of our expenses is the wholesale power. I mean, that's by far our biggest portion of it, the electric utility. Then we have our operating costs. We also have our cost allocation. It's called different things. There's the interfund transfers, a piece of that. There's an admin service charge, that's a piece of that. That's cost allocation that the utility pays to the general fund for the thing that the utility doesn't have. For example, we don't have an HR department. We use the city's HR department. We don't have an IT. We use the city's IT. So we're paying the general fund back for our use for those things. Now, this 15% theoretical is keeping that admin service charge the same. And, that's why we're working through this last piece of the cost of service bill. And by the way, I meant to mention this before. We have Kyle Blanton. Many of you know Kyle Blanton. Kyle Blanton with R-Grid. Kyle Blanton and R-Grid are our cost of service study consultants. And they also look at our sales reports, purchases every month. We have a similar consultant on the gas side. Every month we send these sales reports, our purchases. For them, they do a short-term analysis, kind of project where we're going to be the rest of the year to see if we're actually going to hit the marks that we had originally set out to hit. If we're not, then we have to make changes. And so he looks at those things monthly. He's also doing this cost of service study for us. And so one of the things that we're waiting on is to find out which, is that amount, is that a current admin service charge? Is it what it needs to be? Is it lower? Is it higher? That's a big piece of it. That's a big piece of it, because a lot of that goes to the general. All of it goes to the general.
Mr. Andrew, with what you presented to us earlier today, with electric PPA of 0.008 per kilowatt hour. And then here, I just want to make sure that we're talking about admin service charge Is that increasing the admin service charge?
That's keeping it where it is currently.
So, which is approximately 34 million. In change, so. 34.2, right.
The goal over time, I mean, you can't do this overnight, is to reduce that and have it, operate more on a standalone. But in the position that we are now, just don't feel comfortable, changing that at this point.
I understand. I just want to make sure we're not increasing in that. Since the numbers are a little different from what you had and then what's being presented now, I just want to make sure it's not increasing. And,
Not at this point. I mean, as we go through the overall budgeting process for the city, we will discuss that, but the goal is that at minimum, trying to keep it where it is.
okay.
And so, is it safe to say it's at like 32.4 now, 32.4 million?
If you were looking at that number, that's what it's stated,
Okay,
I don't have
so,
that in front of me right now.
and that is your cost allocation to pay for those expenses, HR, city IT, different things like that? Is that what is being billed for, that transfer to the general fund? Is that what it's been told to you that you're paying for?
That's correct. Now, the 34 million is not all coming from electric. That's probably the collective. It's collective. So in electric, there's about 9 million, 8.9. If you look at this year's budget, the approved budget, going back to July, 8.95 million is cost allocation to general fund. Another approximately 2.5 million is interfund transfer from electric to the general fund. And then there's a similar process on gas that we'll talk about.
And the other thing that I'd like to add to that, the state regulates how much we can legally transfer for that purpose.
So how much historically, how much has it gone up in the past year? I think, Councilman Dodgers, you said 170% or something like that?
Now this is based off of my calculation. This is nothing official from the city right now. It's a spreadsheet that I've had for over years since 2014. And cumulatively for the enterprise fund, I've calculated about $12.6 million in 2014. And it's increased about 260% to 34.3 million, 34,348,000 and change.
Specifically for the electric in 2015, electric was about 6 million between the admin service charge and the interfund transfer. 6 million. This year, it's 11.5, around between 11 and 11.5. Gas was about 5.5 million. This year, it's around 9 million, 9.2. So those have increased over, specifically since the last rate increase, significant rate increase.
So, I want some clarity, I don't know, you can give it on the manager. What exactly are driving those? What's the drivers behind those increases?
Well, I'll say that the number one driver is just the cost of doing business and inflation. If you're comparing something from 2014 to 2026, prices across the board for every home good, everything has increased drastically. If you look at the housing costs for the last 5 years, housing prices have doubled, even in this region. So just the cost of doing business, and the city had grown at one point in time where we had an average of about 800 employees to over 1,000 employees. So just the cost of doing business growing and really not keeping up with the rates from the utility standpoint. Now, I will say that it's been brought to my attention because I wasn't employed with the city during that time, but the city did build up a big rate stabilization fund that basically subsidized rate increases, but now we don't have that available. So in short, that would be my response.
Do you say that the General Assembly are regulating these transfers and?
Not the general assembly, just to say, there's an appropriation that is legally allowed as it relates to transferring funds from the enterprise funds to the general fund. That is a specific limit. I don't know the exact limit right off the top of my head, but I think it's based off a percentage. And it's our goal to make sure that we stay below that threshold.
The utility revenues, are they currently subsidizing any other departments?
I wouldn't say departments, you don't look at it from a department standpoint, you look at it from a fund standpoint, and it's just stated that the enterprise funds have made transfer to the general fund.
Bradley, can you, I might have missed it, I mean, talked about the loan management program. So does it matter then, can you restate again, does it matter if you're enrolled in the program? Your rate on the bill increases.
That's right. If you opt into the program, which means you call our department, we put a load management switch on whatever appliance you sign up for. That you get a credit every month for us being able to use that switch, so that when we run load management to miss that coincidental peak for the month, that particular appliance that you're using during those hours that we're running is shut off.
And what percentage of our customers?
We have 8,000 switches roughly. So, 26,000 electric customers, 8,000 switches. Now, keep in mind, a switch is not necessarily a switch per customer. One customer can have multiple switches on our hot water heater, heat strips, that sort of thing.
But that is something that we market, you think people know about it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We provide free energy audits for anybody who's interested. And one of the things that our techs will go do when they perform the energy audit is recommend which appliance that particular customer has that is eligible for the load management program. And again, it's an opt-in by the customer. And so what they're doing, again, going back to what we we're saying about saving money on load management, that's just passing some of those savings back to our customers. If you're choosing to help us in that peak time by having those heat strips cut off in the winter during that few hours, or that hot water heater cut off for a few hours, then what that's effectively doing is just lowering our total load on the system at the highest peak during the month, and it's saving us some money. And so what we're doing is we're passing that money back on, a portion of it back on, to keep in the effort to keep rates as low as possible. So this, again, theoretical rate adjustment here of 15%, what that includes is it includes about $7.5 million of capital. It includes $5 million a year in replenishment of fund balance. Again, the 90-day fund balance for electric should be somewhere between $20 and $24 million that we should have available. So what this will do, we'll put about over the next 4 years, it'll put $5 million a year back in. So 4 years from now, we'll have a 90-day fund balance. If what this rate would recover. It also recovers the cost for the current cost allocation that we have in the budget. And it covers, obviously, the wholesale power increase and our total wholesale cost.
Will you put anything in the rate stabilization fund?
Essentially, that's what it can be earmarked that way, but essentially that fund balance is what it's for. So if we so choose, council so chooses, if, let's say there's 5 million, if you want 2 million in rate stay and 3 million in the fund balance, that can be worked out in the budget process. So this is the investor-owned comparison. Those are the biggest differences. Now, we want to compare to our HEPA peers. Now, keep in mind, they're all looking at the same 4.5% rate increase that we're looking at in April. So these are their current rates. But it's going to go up by 4.5%. I don't know what the rates are going to go up, but their wholesale cost of power is going to go up 4.5% just like ours.
If you bring that up, we go back to the investor on. Am I hearing correctly that Duke is looking at, or trying to get the for about 10.5%, 10.5% increase of their residential rates?
Yes.
Over beyond what this is?
Yes. Duke's constantly going for increase, and it takes a while. They're being an investor owned. There's a process, there's a tariff process they have to go through the Utilities Commission. So it takes a while for those things to get approved, but yes, they're going through 11% rate increase proposal right now. So that would be in addition to what we're seeing. Okay. These are published rates effective today.
Okay.
So if that takes place, how soon after they get permission to do that? Which they probably would. How long after that does that pass to us?
Well, so that rate increase will go to their customer base, like direct.
Direct customer, not our wholesale.
So our hope, because we're part of the agency, that'll always take place in April. So, but we can anticipate any increases that they're gonna put forward in future years will be presented to us over the winter time and take place in April each year.
What we do have the advantage of is planning in advance and not so much dealing with market fluctuations.
That's right. That's the biggest difference between the gas and electric utility. We can kind of foresee that electric rate increase a few months coming. We can plan on it and it stays that way for the year, for our perspective.
But is it fair to say that typically in Temple, what you experience the same increase from do as they pass on to their direct customers?
Yes, it would be the same.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, don't want to give an impression, I mean, it could always happen, but
Yeah.
historically, we haven't received the same increase that they pass along to their residents as opposed, because we're a wholesale customer. And I believe in Temple, or electricity, or Temple is the largest customer of the, or one of the largest one.
Right. Yeah, so whatever they're going for on their residential, that's not gonna be at a direct percentage increase that the agency would have. They're completely different.
So in the event of escalating high prices due to conflict all over the whole world, Middle East, South America, Caribbean, Africa, wherever else they can find, how is electric somewhat insulated from that? Or do we see it on the gas end or do we?
Yeah, it's a little more insulated than some other sectors of the energy world. So, Duke right now is going through a massive increase or change from coal-fired generation because it's dirty and environmental concerns to natural gas-fired generation. So they're buying natural gas. They're a major, they also own Piedmont Natural Gas. And so, the capacity, which we'll talk about on the gas piece here in a minute, but the capacity is strained because of how much electric is being generated through the use of natural gas. So natural gas is huge domestically. We're not importing natural gas. We have it here. Our biggest issue with natural gas now on a national perspective is getting it where it needs to go on the days you need it most. And so that's what we'll talk about now on the gas piece. But so yeah, somewhat insulated. It's not like oil prices and what we see at the pump. The electric rate increases are slow moving. You kind of see them coming down the road. So, just like the earlier slide said, the Kemp already projected out. We chose option 2, 4.5% this year, tentatively 5.5% next year, 4.5% 2 years after that. Now, that's too far out. I wouldn't take it to the bank, but that's what they're throwing out to us. All right, so publicly owned system. Now, this is more of our peer-to-peer comparison. Okay, now, same 2 columns on the left. It's, our base rate, our rate with the current PPA in place. Same column on the right, 15% theoretical rate adjustment. But you'll see here that these numbers are a lot closer to us. And that makes sense because they're paying the same wholesale rate that we're paying. We're all in the same membership. So like I said, when we experience that rate increase in April, they're going to experience that same rate increase in April. And how they respond is up to them. But you'll see here that I can imagine, I'm not going to speak for them. We'll see what they propose. But I would imagine these probably would not stay the same with their rate increases coming because they're in the same membership. So as of right now, you see that only Tarboro is behind us on current as we stand. We're with this PPA we have in place, we're at 117 on our base rate. We're right there with Tarboro. Okay, the PPA that we have in place puts us slightly ahead, but still behind GUC and City of Wilson. All right, so even if we were to do this theoretical rate adjustment of 15%, that puts us squarely in line with both GUC and Wilson. Tarboro is obviously smaller than us. We're the second or third largest system on the electric side. So those are our close comparisons there.
Question here, obviously, the main difference is the facility charge. How does Tarboro have such a low facility charge compared to the others that you have up there? Do you have any idea how they
I'd have to,
determine that?
we would have to look at their operating costs and what allocations go where, you know, we're pretty confident that our
I'm
wholesale
not
house is
asking
gonna.
for detail. that.
Yeah, but, you know, and it's also part of rate making philosophy. The higher your facilities charge, the lower you can get by with a lower actual rate. Because the facilities charge, depending on your rate making philosophy, is such that if the facilities charge covers all of your O and M to have that service there, then you don't have to make very much on the margin of actual usage. If you have a low facilities charge, you may have to have a higher rate. And that's all based on, it's a philosophy. Each system does it differently. So yeah, that's where we're at. These rates, these facility charges have been in place for a number of years for us. And so,
And Brad, the thing that I would add too is, just look at Tarboro, our size in general, we're almost twice them on our customer base. I think we have, over 30-some thousand customers?
yeah, 26
26
electric customers.
Yeah, and so I don't even think Tarboro's population is 22,000. Right. That's one way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to size, we're much more closely aligned with Wilson and GUC. GUC's obviously. And these rates here, I just, again, want to make sure these are including the known load management credits. So, you know, if you're a customer that's not taking advantage of those credits, you're leaving someone to pay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, no matter what you put on this slide today and what's presented, people still gonna say, that's for concerned citizens about, the utility rates. And some don't have the appreciation of what this council and the previous council has done to make it, affordable and, try to head off these rate increases by being forward thinking about rate stabilization. So, all I can say, we have tried, we have accomplished some things that our predecessors said would never could be done. Because the debt is normally would be paid off in 2026, which was this year. And we've done that in 20, well, wow, we do what, 2017, 2018. And so I don't care, that's the narrative. I think the narrative is because of the fight, almost 10 or 15 years to get to where we are now. And people have, like Dr. Walker said, amnesia and don't want to believe how far we have come. But in this whole utility piece and rates and stuff, we've become more educated and passionate about it, and I think there's something that we can just hop on, but, and then too, we have a bundle bill, you know, here's my light bill, that's what you got, we got about 6 or 7 things on our actual bill. So what is your electric bill? That's what is your gas bill? So if you talk to someone in Raleigh, Durham, they say, well, my electric bill is $96. Well, my bill is $900. That's not your entire electric bill. It's just using a lot. And then we don't know how, you know, our housing stock, we spend a lot of time in trying to create grants to help these homes that are older, 40 years or older. We, you know, came up with the grants to help weatherize and to update HVAC system. And so a lot of things that we have put in place, the energy efficiency, you know, the rebate on the unit, and some other things that we were trying to do where we could, citizen could finance if they could not get a grant, within their utility bill, if their heating system. A lot of citizens who have applied for these grants that did not have heat this winter. They had to use, you know, electric heaters, blankets, aerosol, or whatever, to try to keep warm. And so, just one thing people don't realize, we have done, in this whole piece, not just the rates, but, you know, living conditions of our citizens and trying to put things in place, so they can benefit from it. Thank you.
Your numbers, ran, the model was ran on that, all available load management credits. Can you break what are all the available load management credits and how does it affect the consumer?
Yeah, so I'll defer, Joey's over our load management. Which appliances do we offer load management credits? Heat strips, water heaters, and air conditioners. So some of those credits are used, they're not all year. So heat strips, that credit is given each month for the months that you use heat strips, which is the winter time. The AC credits are given for that period of time during the year. Water heaters are all year type thing. So each one of those credits is different as far as what the amount on the bill is reduced by.
Did I say something about $17 per switch, $17 per account?
Could be up to that if you use all available ones.
Okay, it could be up to $17.
On some months, that's right. The
Per
months that-
customer.
Per customer, that's right. It's per customer. So again, just to reiterate, this theoretical 15%, we're just waiting on some budget clarity before we can finalize that cost of service and actually come to you with a formal proposal of a percentage. And in that formal proposal, it'll actually describe how it affects each rate class. So what that impact of each rate class will. So that's gonna be part of a formal proposal that we'll provide to you at a later date. Once we have a little bit more clarity in the budget piece. Any other questions on the electric before I switch to gas? All right, this won't take quite as long on the gas side, but specifically regarding rates, kind of give you a current year update. The gas base rate has not changed since September of 2015. A lot's changed in the world since September of 2015. Okay, so, the gas system, we buy the gas in two components. We buy it on the commodity side on the market, and it fluctuates day to day with intraday, everything. And it is a little more susceptible to global events. Even though natural gas is domestic for us, it's not quite the difference that oil would have. But the capacity piece didn't used to be much of an issue. Years ago, you could basically pretty much, your gas price was going to be mostly commodity and just a small amount of capacity. Now, capacity, what is that? We've got to get the gas from where it's drilled, which is the Gulf, to us, and we have to pay pipelines to get it to us. And so that capacity piece is a portion of our gas portfolio. In recent years, in the last 10, 12 years, we get that gas also from the Pennsylvania area, the Marcellus Shale. So it's coming from both directions. But Transco runs in the Charlotte area, the western part of the state. Piedmont's the only pipeline that brings it from Transco to eastern North Carolina. So your three municipal gas systems, which are us, City of Wilson, Greenwood Utility Commission, they all are customers of Piedmont because Piedmont's the only pipeline that brings natural gas east. Okay, so we all have contracts with Piedmont to pay to deliver X amount of gas every single day. Okay, so when we have a cold event, kind of like we thought we were going to talk about, when we have a cold event, like we had the polar vortex from the 24th of January through the first few days of February. What we're seeing now is the capacity, and those that were here when we were talking about the Atlantic Coast Pipeline that came through a few years ago and how that was a huge miss for us as a system, and a region. Not our fault, but we desperately needed that. The pipeline capacity is not there. We just got through talking about how much the electric generation is using natural gas now. So when electric is using natural gas to produce electricity at the generation plants in the summer and also in the winter, what we're seeing in the wintertime when we're using it to heat our customers' homes, to run our manufacturing facilities around here, that capacity gets constrained. And that's also a market commodity. You have the commodity and you have the capacity. And that capacity is what gets most volatile. So the last few years, we've seen a lot of volatility in capacity piece. The United States has plenty of natural gas to sell. It's just not a good way to get it to everybody that needs it when they need it. And so the pipeline system needs to be improved. Currently, as it stands today, since October 1st, we have a PGA, a purchase gas adjustment of 20 cents per therm. I'll show you a rate comparison in a minute to kind of show you what that does for a typical gas customer. But PA was put in place. In 2005, council approved a method for my position and along with, talking with the finance director and the city manager to implement a PGA as needed because it's a real time decision, on the gas prices. That PGA exists to cover any cost of increase that we see on the market. So just to give you an example, during that cold stretch at the end of January, the gas prices that are typically in the $3 to $4 range rose to over $138. Okay. So that can kill a budget really, really quick. If we have to pay for that, we can use that PGA to pass on that the intent is to pass on just the wholesale cost of gas increase to the customer. Right now, because of where we're at, that's a 20 cent per ton. Now, to give you an idea, we do, well, I'll talk about it in a minute, but if you look back, everybody knows this cold, everybody's been talking about the electric bills being high, gas bills being high. Up through the end of February, from an energy perspective, we use heating degree days as kind of a metric. We post about that on our Facebook page, try to get information out about that. But heating degree days is basically what your average day was below the baseline of 65 degrees. Those heating degree days are 19% higher for this fiscal year, which encompasses the winter. So this winter is essentially 20% colder than normal, than the last 5 years. So in addition to the PPA, in addition to the 4% rate increase that we put in last July, we also have a 20% colder winter. Okay, so hopefully that explains a little bit of what we're seeing here. It's not us pumping revenue. It's us. It's just the nature of the business. Heating degree days, when you start getting down to average day of 32 or less, you're using exponentially more power than you would be using on a 50 degree day. And so, that's what kind of goes into play.
Rather, with that, it's my understanding that we being energy resources, use more of the, generators to help with that. Is that accurate?
To help with it.
Well, we use them more often because we were worried about maybe some of the power side, the electric side, some limitations coming there. And then in addition to the demand.
Yeah. Well, so if you remember, it wasn't that long ago, but that entire week, it was like, it was kept being colder than what we were kind of thinking. And the cold just kind of stuck around. And those multiple days of cold really plays an energy impact on both the gas and electric side. When that cold kind of sets in and you got winter weather that goes with it, you got wind that goes with it. Yeah, we were running generators a lot because we were trying to hit that coincidental peak. So our increase in generator usage cut down on our wholesale power by hitting that peak.
Okay, I thought there was another reason as well, dealing with potential.
That gets into, so Duke, emergency type, a few years back around Christmas, Duke did rolling blackouts on some of their residential customers.
Right.
Because it got so cold and their system couldn't keep up. When Duke issued during that cold snap, they requested of their customers to do what they could to kind of back off. We didn't have to do that because we were running generators.
Right.
That's what you're getting at. We didn't have to, because we were running generators. We were reducing load. So if Duke were to come to us and say, we need you to reduce load, we'd say, well, we're already reducing this amount of load to take it off your system. So we were doing our part by running generators. In effect, we were also missing the coincidental peak, keeping our monthly charge.
So which is another validation of why we have so many generators and why we invest in generators.
Right.
For demand and for that particular reason you just described there.
Right.
Which is what I was getting.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you.
Typically, I mean, it changes whether we can get used or new, but we typically have a pretty quick payback on generators. Less than 5 years in most cases. Our savings, in some cases, in the case of the used one, we can get that cost back less than 3 years. It just depends on each situation and what size the generator is and what price we can get it for. But yeah, it helps a lot. So looking ahead, again, not quite as uniform and not quite as, steady of an increase that we're looking at. The natural gas market can change. But we do have a pretty good idea that the price is gonna be, the actual gas, the commodity piece is gonna be between $4.50 and $4.90 during the winter months of the next 3 winters. Okay? The capacity piece, which is the most volatile piece right now, is an additional $3 or $3.50. So you're looking at somewhere between $7.50 and $8.50 combined to get natural gas here during the winter months. Now, there's a lot of things that we do internally to make sure that we're not fully exposed to that market. We do three layers of 25% hedge at different times. Something similar to a dollar cost averaging perspective. All right, so we'll hedge gas in layers of 25% multiple years out so that we can kind of cut out that volatility. What that does is that allows us to be exposed by 25%. Now, on a warm month, we may not use much of that 25% and very little exposure. On a month like January and February, where it kind of straddled both months, that cost went up tremendously. The wholesale price of, the market price of natural gas was over $8 in January. In February, it was around 7, a little over 7. And so our rates aren't set to recover that gas price. So that's why we have the PGA. We'll talk about our rates in a minute, but essentially those are methods that we use. Now, we also use what we call an LNG peaking service. On those coldest days, when that gas price went above 40, it went above 100, above $150. Instead of us going out and buying gas on the market that day, we had LNG peaking. We purchased LNG peaking. We've been doing it since 2019, where we can allocate a certain amount to come on our system that's already bought and paid for, so that we're not exposed to that market price. And so only on, we have very little risk to buy the market. I mean, and the entirety of that week, we bought 0 market gas. And we saved about $2.2 million just in that week off the wholesale cost of gas by having that LNG peaking piece in play.
Reverend, are you intentional about that manual? Was that an automated process that was it somehow?
Oh, no, so that, we have a broker, Texigen is our natural gas broker. We talk with them all the time. We're nominating gas, we're hedging gas. About this time of year, we usually see a second quarter low. This will come in about April. Typically, that's when we buy LNG for the next winter. And that will fluctuate, you know.
In times past, we've had, well, those, right, said 200 people, and then we need interpretation for they speak. But do you think you could arrange for that?
Absolutely.
That's something anybody want to hear directly.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, Councilman Blackwell, and you need to help me out with the organization that you were president of recently. I think you were for, what was the organization you're involved in?
For the gas industry, I'm on the APJ board and the CPGA board.
Okay, so he's in the right places to help us out, so,
We can tell.
So, yeah, I can absolutely get, Texigen to come here, we can schedule a presentation to give you. So the gas, market is complicated, and that's why we use their assistance on doing that. But we have these plans in place. We have a policy that talks about how much we can hedge, how far out we can hedge, and those sorts of things. So we also have the ability to hedge that capacity, but that's not that far out because that's very volatile. So we do the best we can to make sure we cut peaks and valleys off. And so that, you know, that's good for budget.
At the point here, that's why it's important. You know, the boards, we talked about it, out in the lobby. It's important that we have staff on certain boards that's important that when we have these conferences that you attend, to gain more knowledge of what is happening around the world and to network. That plays a major part in business. You know, people say all business not done in the office is done on the golf. I don't play golf, but some people do. And I'm quite sure a lot of deals are cut on the golf course, but anyway, like any other place. But again, my point is that that's part of business. I just want to put that in. You can question that. So, thank you.
Thank you for that, Councilman Knight. I'd like to state, during our reduction, operation efficiency plan, we did suspend some travel, but Bradley was allowed to do that because we figured that that would be essential to our operating our business, so he was able to continue to do that. And thank you for your service on those four tracks.
Yes, sir. So gas cost service study, not quite as far along as the electric, a little bit further behind due to some purchasing, requirements there, but we're going through the same process. It's the same process. And the biggest question we have is, where the budget outlook for this year comes up. So we're working through that future budget outlook. Similarly to the electric side, we are operating with very little fund balance in the gas system. We are projecting with the help of, obviously we have this PGA in place, with the operational cuts that we made to the budget, operational cuts that are going to come to the cost allocation piece of the budget. We are projecting to finish that the gas budget balanced. So we're not dipping into any fund balance because again, we don't have it there to dip into. But we have to build that back. Now, the difference you'll see here in our recommendation, our gas rates are significantly under recovering our costs by a lot. And we've been utilizing the PGA too much. Now, when I say too much, I don't mean that we've been utilizing it often. We've just been, when we've needed it, it's been a large number. The 20 cent firm is about 20% on a residential customer. A few years ago, when gas prices got up close to $5, we put a 40 cent PGA in for the entire year, about 40% increase to the customer. It really shouldn't be that big of a swing. Our rate should be recovering most of this with very marginal amounts of the PGA. But because our rates are so far behind, we've had to rely on the PGA too much. So our gas rates are under recovering revenue versus expenditure. And again, part of that expenditure piece is the cost allocation. $28 million gas budget, $9 million of it goes to general fund, $15 million of it buys gas. We operate the gas system on $4 million. So just to kind of give you some references on where we're at there. All right, so we're under recovering. So the fiscal year 27 budget, we're obviously looking at an O&M budget that is maintaining the system. Natural gas has a safety aspect that a lot of people are aware of. In order to run a safe system, a tight system, there's a lot of things the natural gas system is, or the industry is regulated by the federal government. There's marks, there's compliances and stuff that we have to have, inspections that we have to have. So all that goes into the O&M budget. We still have some.
What's the difference with the, when we buy gas, let's say super plane or whatever, and then come to?
Propane propane is slightly different. Propane is delivered to you as a liquid and then you use the gas vapor off of it coming out of the tank. It's a heavier gas. Natural gas burns a little hotter. Natural gas is all gas. It's all gas from the oil well all the way through the pipeline system. So pipeline gas is delivered from the Gulf, from the Pennsylvania Marcellus Shale, whereas propane is a part of the oil rig process. It's pulled out, refined, and it's not pipeline. Most of it. It's about the same. Actually, natural gas typically is cheaper. Natural gas is typically 60 to 70% of the cost of propane for the same heat value.
So with propane, when your tank can't be, and you can't pay, you can use the gas.
That's right. That's
You
correct.
get an extension on your bill.
That's correct. Whereas natural gas we have continuous supply. It's on demand, so to speak.
So maintenance of the lines becomes critical.
That's right.
There is no storage,
That's right.
so it's always a flow.
That's correct.
And are we susceptible to, terrorism, people intentionally trying to roll up gas lines or?
So we're always susceptible to it. It's in the ground, so it's not visible, but you see it on your meter sets. You see it along your businesses at your meter sets. the pipeline maintenance is a key part of the compliance. We have to make sure that the pipeline material, we have steel main replacement program, that's part of our capital budget. And we're replacing that.
That's our responsibility.
That's our
All
responsibility.
connectivity to the main line.
We have 5 gate stations that we pull from Piedmont. Piedmont delivers the gas to our system at 5 different points along our system. And then we own everything from that point all the way to the customer meter. And so that's our responsibility. So, we have to make sure it's inspected, leak surveyed. We have to make sure it's repaired, it's tested, all the stuff that goes in there into the compliance. And that's part of our operation.
Question. Help me understand, because, it's hard for me, give me some clarity on the rates. Are the rates too low, or are they, we here talking about expenses and cutting expenses? Or are the expenses just too high? And I've been asking for an itemized list of expenses, because what exactly that 9 million that you're paying is going to?
Right. It's a combination of both. I'll show you on the comparison here in a second. You'll see the difference in our rates. But we're under collected and expenses, are probably higher than in some regard. So the last thing here, if necessary capital expenditures, pipe replacement, steel main replacement, ERT index, gas meter index, gas meter replacement, all that needs to be funded through capital, project. And then also we have a plan, to, again, hit that 180-day mark. Now, the gas system is a smaller system than the electric system. Our gas system is 28 to 30 million dollars. So 180-day mark for us is going to be 14 to 15 million dollars in the operating fund. The reason we go 180 day, my suggestion is the reason we should go to 180 day over 4 years is because of the volatility of the market. It can drain that down really quickly. If we were only sitting at 6 or 7 million, one bad week in January, it could cut that in half. And so if we would have had that 180 day versus 190 versus the 90 day for the bank. So here's a comparison you were talking about, or you were asking about. And so what I've got here is similarly to the electric comparison sheet. I've got the first column is our base rate. You'll notice our facilities charge, similar to our electric facilities charge. This is during the winter because we have that changes for us in the gas side. $34. This is our first 10 therms. Anything over 10 therms, we're at like 85 cents. To our customers with 100 therms of usage, which is about average during the winter time, it's about $121. With the PGA in place that we have now, 20 cents, you can see that it's not quite a 20% increase to the wholesale vehicle there, to the whole vehicle. But you'll see here that we're at about $141. Okay, $20 increase. When you compare that to Wilson Energy, they're at 174, 43%, we're 43% less. Greenwood Utility Commission, we're 37% less. And Piedmont Natural Gas is almost double, 81% more than our 100 therm customer. And so kind of going back to what you were talking about, we are significantly under covered in comparison to our peers. These are the 3 gas systems that are, us and Greenville and Wilson are the 3 municipally owned systems. Piedmont's the other system that's just outside of our territory. So you can see here that the gas side, we're not anywhere close to the rates that our peers have paid or charging. Now, again, this is theoretical. This is not, keep pushing that. This is not a proposed rate adjustment, but just to kind of give you an idea of how far off we are. At 50% increase would still put us well below Piedmont and slightly more than Wilson and Greenville. Now, Wilson changes theirs every month. Greenville, we'll see here, they have different rates they charge winter and summer. I'll show that comparison here. During the months of April through October, when we don't have a high gas usage, we give that cost back a little bit in the form of a reduced facilities charge. That drops to $14 during the summer months for us. You see their facility charges did not drop at all year over year, month over month, within the year. But you'll see that their rates are different. Wilson isn't, but Greenwood Utilities and Piedmont, their rates are different. They actually charge a little bit more in the summer on their rate. So collectively, again, way behind on the gas rates. That cost of service study, once we have some better, clarity on budget, what exactly we need to account for, in that budget piece, making sure we account for replenishment of fund balance and making sure we account for some capital projects that we really need to, we can't delay on. We've got room to be competitive. Any questions on the gas piece there?
Bradley, obviously this is residential. Do our major industries, are they primarily electric or gas? Both.
Both. So we have, we have a lot of our bigger industries use both. They're both electric and gas. The gas system actually extends far beyond the electric system territory. The two territories aren't exactly the same, and they both extend outside the city limits. For those that don't know, we serve the entire town of Nashville, natural gas. We serve natural gas all the way up to Universal Leaf on 58 near Castelia. We serve natural gas all the way down to Highway 97 and 95. We serve out Edgecombe County on both sides, for both utilities. And so there's a decent percentage of our customer base that are not in our city limits and not on our city electric. So our large industrials, yes, they use both.
So when you present your final calculations and recommendations during the budget discussion, will you have information what a typical industrial client will be?
Yes, sir.
See,
Yes, sir. So our biggest gas industrial customers is set up similar to what we talked about earlier with the demand and the non-demand for electric. There's a difference in the gas, industrial customers too. Our biggest industrial customers, they buy the gas at market price through us, but they buy the market price. They pay us, for capacity. Because it's a market, that's typical in the industry for large gas loads. We don't have a margin on the actual gas supply. We will hedge gas for those customers. So if they want to have budget clarity moving forward, we'll hedge gas. But that's the actual commodity piece for our largest customers is a pass through on the gas fees. And then we charge and have a margin on the capacity. And that, again, that's typical across the industry, nationwide. So what we would be preparing is similar stuff.
Brad, throughout your presentation, you mentioned depending on the budget. And I guess my question to you is, what do you need for budgeting to know to move forward with your recommendation?
The biggest thing is a pretty firm commitment on numbers and where they're staying the same and what we need to include. For example, if it's the desire of council and our management to fund a replenishment, to try to replenish the balance in the budget of utilities, we need to account for that in the rates. If it's a desire to keep the admin service charge where it's at, then we need to know what that number is and we need to keep to it. And once we set rates on it, once we come up with something to propose to you, if that number changes at the 11th hour, we have to recognize that we have to make sure that the rates are adjusted to meet that. If we decide, electric, let's just throw numbers out. Electric's a $90 million operation, and then we have to have rates to recover $90 million. And then in June, that goes to 93 million because we're changing some stuff around from the budget side, not on the operation side, but from the city perspective. Then our rates don't recover 93 million. You see, so we want to make sure that we're recovering what we need and what the city needs in the rates. And so that's the only thing that we're waiting on, really, is that just a little bit of clarity and direction of where those numbers need to be so we can bake them in, provide a cost of service piece to that. Kyle, you want to speak to that? I mean, That's the process.
Sure, that's the process. I would say there are four main parts to the electric utility budget. One
Could
is,
you come to the microphone?
Yeah,
Because we got people,
sure,
tuning in. Sorry about that.
no, thank you. I would say there are four main parts to the electric utility budget. One is wholesale power costs. We have a pretty good handle from the GIMPA, what those costs can be expected. We have a good budget on that. We have the O and M for the electric utility itself. We have a pretty good handle on that budget year over year. The utility knows what it needs to operate itself. And then we're gonna look at fund transfers, right? The administrative service charge, and then capital expenses. So capital expenses, the utility can budget for and plan, but there is an approval process for that's okay to spend in the upcoming year. The interfund transfers, the admin service charge, that piece that goes to the city, that's what we need clarity on, so that we know where to set the rates to recover that much money. Is that fair?
Well, you up to
Mhm.
Well, I was just going to answer your question earlier because I went to the school of government, and this is based on, wow, 2015, but I don't know if the general statute has changed, but transfer from electric fund to certain electric cities may not exceed the rate of 3% of the gross capital assets of the electrical system or 5% of the gross annual revenues of the preceding fiscal year.
So, before we consider raising rates any further, what cost reductions inside of the utility system should we consider?
So, we've obviously looked at, if you take a hard look at the electric capital. We've looked over the last 5 years of what we spend, and these capital projects in electric they're expensive, they're multi-year projects, and they take time, they take a lot of money to do. So we can push those, but when we push those, we're taking on risk. We're taking on risk of how long that needs to be. I mean, we're not replacing substations just to replace them. We're replacing them because they're coming up to end of life. We're not replacing generators just to replace them. They're coming up to an end of life. And so to have that planned out, multiple years, electric has a long range plan. We kind of know what those expenses are going to be. Those things can be pushed, but only for a short period of time. We've pushed a lot of capital this year due to the situation that we're in. Tree trimming is an example of capital expenditures that are typically ones that gets pushed. But the reason we didn't have more power outages in these two events, the ice event in January and the snow event, is because for the last 8-10 years, we've been doing a great job of tree trimming. Keeps those limbs away from our lines. So those things, there's things that you can push, but you're going to pay for them at some point. You're going to pay for them in reduced service. You're going to pay for them in a higher price later. So I think the key is specifically on electric to manage that out a little more even. And so that's one thing that we've got internally that we're looking at. On the gas side, honestly, we're running a gas for $4 million. We can't get anything.
The only thing that I'd like to add, that's good in theory, and we're doing our best to, like you said, Bradley, kind of delay what we can from the capital expenditure standpoint. But the reality is, in years past, we've had a fund balance to address the capital expenses. What we've explained to the council and to the public over these last few months is that we no longer have a fund balance. So the fact that we don't have a fund balance means you have to adjust the rates. Now, what that adjustment is, that's something that we can let you decide based on the information from the consultant and others, but we don't have a fund balance across the board in any account. The cash that we are presenting to the council over the last several months now, even the last couple of days, shows that is our remaining cash across all accounts in electric, gas, water, sewer, and the general fund.
And I would say that you, Robert, the question you asked me, which is a good question. But if you go to the McKempa meeting,
Can you tell me about the admin call?
well, I'm just trying to share something with you from the experience that I've been through and moving with others. if you ever go to the Kemper meeting, you have a great experience. And those same questions you asked me, I asked those questions in the room about the board, room, tables all around the room, about 80 people, 60 some people sitting at the table. You ask those questions, you look like you're asking, talking a different language, but your advocacy needs to be, at those meetings as well, because that's where it really starts. And we try to make sure that our infrastructure, not only with electric, gas, but water and sewer, that those systems run efficiently, that make sure that those operations run, smoothly. So, but I was just saying, really see the bigger picture of it is in Wilson, when those in the Kemper meetings are being held. And then from there, they can have the electricity board meeting. And that's the very top where all the cities are being made. So I was just sharing with you another level of where all these discussions are being taking place. And decisions are being made, which are passed down to the local municipalities within that. And they can play a very key city.
Appreciate that. City manager, how can we find out what exactly are these admin service charges and what are they made of? That cost allocation, because we, to be very clear, I don't want you to sacrifice or jeopardize anything with your infrastructure or your system. But a big portion of this admin service cost and the cost allocation, these transfers, I would love to know what they are and get an itemized breakdown of where that money is going.
As stated before, we can show you, the formula that is used and how it's going to the general fund. And if we can break it down to a itemized formula, we will do our best to do that as well. And that will take place during the budget process.
I have a question about your planning process. We have no fund balance, so I'm assuming that your maintenance costs is truly allocated to whatever those priorities are that we will taking place. At the same time, we grow our way out of challenges, right? So we still have to be prepared to lay new lines wherever there's new business opportunity, whether serving a residential community or serving commercial or industrial customer, possible customer. In the meantime, until we get surplus buildable, how do we prepare for building opportunities for growth throughout our entire community? One of my pet peeves has been that you keep building infrastructure where there's already business, and that makes sense. I understand that. But if we want business, so in other places, we got to prepare those places for growth. And in the planning of our future, we have corridors of opportunity that we're looking at how to expand our infrastructure and what those potential costs would be. And that also gives us something, to set our sights on for why we need to save.
Sure, absolutely. So I think the key difference in the electric and the gas utility is electric is the territory set. There's very little expansion that can be done. You're only in, dealing with a few customer choice areas. So the territory and electric set, moving to a new customer within that territory is typically not terribly expensive, but there's a return on investment, there's a process, and what we should be doing is making sure that there's a commitment up front that we can realize the revenue from that before we enter into something, before we're moving that out. Gas is a little different. There's nothing that boxes us in on gas. We can go wherever there's a business case. And so, but there has to be a business case, and we have to have a return on investment. And so, in that sense, when it comes to budget and how we do things through the operating through the year, obviously with very little fund balance, we're not going to jump in and with the build it and they'll come mentality until we can give that back up to where it needs to be. Now, that being said, if we know there's a commitment, we know there's a utility, or there's an industry, or there's a company that's coming, there's a development that's coming, we're committed to making sure that we're gonna expand to those areas. Typically on the gas side, what I've always done is wait for our capital projects to be implemented after the winter. We do a lot of our work in March through June. What that allows us to do is get through the winter to see if it's gotten crazy on us, from a money perspective. But what it also allows us to do is, if there's something that we have to push, I can push it 2 or 3 months into next fiscal year and save that money this year. Electric's a little bit different, like I said, but, probably our mentality, and we talked about this internally, we're not gonna, use these funds going into fiscal year 27 for expansion unless we have firm commitments that there's development that's gonna be there. In some cases, there's some upfront payment of that. What we try to do with our developers, specifically of subdivisions, is make sure we sign memorandums of understanding. They're gonna commit to putting X amount of facilities in, so we can kind of do our cost allocation and realize the return on investment. So we're gonna have to kind of feather the gas a little bit in these next year or 2 fiscal years until those fund balances are built back up.
The only thing that I'll add to that statement is that when it comes to those construction projects, that is a scenario where we may have some help from the outside sources, because if there's a huge economic development project, we may be able to reach our partners at the state or federal level who may be able to provide grant funding. I don't want to count on that, but it's a higher percentage chance for us to do that when it comes to those type of infrastructure projects.
And I do want to say too, El, you are absolutely correct in that, in the past, we had the comfort of having that fund balance so that if we wanted to take on a capital project that our rates weren't set to recover, we could probably consider it, especially considering most of the electric capital projects on multi-year projects. Having no fund balance, it's basically any capital projects we're doing in the next year or 2 fiscal years are paid for by cash. We're not getting any financing for it. We're not going to the bank and asking for money to help us get this going. We have to fund it. So, it's imperative that we build that fund balance back and set, and those rates need to be set to pay for those things in the rates. We can't rely on having a rainy day fund to go, fix that breaker at a substation. Like, we need to make sure that we're allocating money that is not, earmarked for something else directly to building that back up. So it's pay as you go right now. We're in pay as you go mode on capital projects.
Brandon, how many substations does the city? have?
12 substations?
12 substations. Cost money, each and every one of them up.
Substation rebuilds, $8 million roughly. We've got 2 point of deliveries. They're bigger, that's obviously where we take the power from Duke. We've rebuilt 6 substations in the last 10 to 12 years. But, it's worth, we've got 6 more to rebuild over the next probably 10 to 20 years, and $6 to $8 million piece. That's only going to go up. Lead times on those materials, those transformers, those breakers are, like I said earlier, 12, sometimes up to 30 months. So a lot of the planning that we do on capital is really money spent in the future. We're planning for a project. We need to have capital funds available. But the good thing is we have a little bit of time before a lot of those things come to fruition and for payment to get those things kind of planned in. If we have in our rates a plan to capture some fund balance back.
Thank you. I keep hearing that in your rates. So if you had it that you wasn't given as much in transfers, then would that balance it out instead of looking at the rates? My question too is the enterprise fund. They lost money. They're losing money, correct?
The question is, it depends on how you ask the question, okay? And the reason I say that is because our revenues cover our wholesale cost of energy, our operations cost. But when you add in cost allocation sometimes it puts us negative.
Okay.
Now, that's not all the capital, a lot of it, and I wish Cheryl was here because I had a lot of questions for her
Mhm.
when I took this position about the capital piece of it. Because electric has a lot of multi-year capital projects. A lot of those don't come out and get paid until that portion of that project is completed. So sometimes what we've been utilizing in years past is we have earmarked capital funds, but that didn't get spent that year, so we carried it forward. All right, so what that does is that artificially increases the expenditures that year. And then if whatever gets done that year, if not all of it gets done, that gets carried forward again. There's another method that we're looking at trying to implement and working with finance to make sure that we come to y'all with project ordinance that basically says, this is the project, this is what we want, this is what we want to fund, it's set aside. And so that we're not affecting the budget with carry forwards every year. Because if you cue back and look at some of our past fiscal years, you'll see in electric, it looks like we overspent on capital.
Mhm.
And in that year, capital did exceed what it was supposed to. But a lot of that money was carry forward money from previous years. That makes sense? You know, we carry, because they're just long projects. If we put in a PO for breakers today, in March, we might get them next May. Which means we have to put it in there, do a purchase order, expense it out. But we actually will not pay the vendor until next year. So that money has to be carried forward in the method that we've been doing, in the city.
And if you recall from the audit presentation that was done yesterday, that was one of the findings that took place, is that certain projects were not placed in the proper fiscal year. And so since I've been manager, we are changing some of those previous practices that's done for the last few years and trying to do them what we feel is the more appropriate way, according to guidance from general accounting principles. So the things that we have implemented for the last 10 months will address it, but it's not an overnight fix. So what we have to concentrate now on, number one, is our rates, because as an enterprise fund, they're supposed to operate like a standalone business. That's how we have them set up as separate funds. So they're supposed to not necessarily make a profit in the sense of a business where the money they make over the balance sheet goes to shareholders, but it goes for that fund balance, so we can have opportunity to buy capital things and plan for capital projects. But the point that we're at now, we don't have the opportunity to make a whole lot of more cuts to his operation. As you said, he's running the whole department on a $4 million budget in the gas department. We have to adjust the rates to account for these things, and you can't just account for one. You have to look for multiple years, and the things that other council members have pointed out about the wholesale rates that we're paying. We have to account for those because we have already been notified that they are increasing. So I think it's not a situation where we do one or the other. It's a situation where we do both.
Okay, got you. I'm not asking you to compromise anything from your point of view. We're talking about what you're transferring to the general fund and looking at that. You have Greenville up there. You said run as an independent. Greenville Utilities, to my knowledge, they run independently. And our enterprise fund has been showing a loss. Do you know how long the enterprise fund been losing, how many years? Is this the first year?
All that information is included in the audit for the last several years. And that was presented yesterday.
Can you tell me how many years have we been the enterprise fund?
I don't have the audit in front of me, but you have a copy of it, and all the information is included in the audit.
So if you was like Greenville Utilities that you was running on your own, do you think that you will be losing money?
It's all based on your rates. So the key here is, you know what your expenses are and you set rates accordingly. So, you know, that's really the piece that we're trying to zone in on. And as long as our rates are set to recover our expenses, we're making money, regardless of what those expenses are or rates are. Now, you know, and to answer the question, the last 3 fiscal years, electric's run deficit. With the most recent audit being the biggest deficit. A lot of that was capital expenditures, but it was capital expenditures because they were multi-year projects. Gas has been off and on, it kind of swayed back and forth. The years that we have the PGA in high enough, it covers years we don't, it doesn't. And so Now, just to clarify, Green Utilities is an entirely different setup than us and Wilson.
We don't want it, we know the difference.
No, I'm not saying we want to do it. From my understanding, this is what I don't want to do. You're telling me if the last choice is to raise rates on our customers, is that your recommendation? Or is there any other expenses or things that can be cut before we raise rates? Let me just tell you,
They're raising the rates.
in Southeast Rocky Mount, 27% of people live below poverty. You have 65% older homes. That was 1970. We know that those are gonna be the most stressed because they don't have insulation and things in their home. So when you raise rates, that should be our last option of raising rates on utility, especially what we're currently going through. That's Southeast Rocky Mount. South Rocky Mount, 25% live below poverty. I think it's my turn to go. 25%, is below poverty. So as this council sit here, I want to explore all opportunities before we talk about raising utility rates on a vulnerable population of seniors. A lot of them seniors living in older homes and cannot afford a current utility bill. So I just want to be very clear on where I stand, why I'm asking these questions.
I understand that. That's why,
Right, but I want to say something, because that's the last thing, and I'm gonna get you straight right here. I try.
Come on with
it. But it's the last thing that this council ever wanted to do is raise some daggone utility rates. Now, you might just move here from daggone Long Island, New York, but we've been fighting here for a long darn time to get the rates the way they are. So you better do your daggone history. And another daggone thing, I was born in South Rocky Mountain, in a cinder block house with a wood heater. And when you look at wards 1, 2, 3, and 4, where this investment was not put in those communities, now we see investment which you have benefited from a house, Atlantic Avenue, for installation, home improvement. You got $375,000 because you wanted to improve housing where these vulnerable people live based upon the grants that we created that they could get the money to do these things. But you ain't gonna grandstand today and say we want to raise utility rates on vulnerable people. So that's a lie. We only raise rates when we have to, and it comes from the Kemper. If you go to Wilson and go to the Electric Cities, you go fight with them people. When I went there, was one person that looked like me, that was the mayor of Scotland Neck. And we fought like the Dickens. And it was Rocky Mount and Newman that stood up against Duke. And people said we were stupid. But we felt the burden of the people. So I ain't going out like that. I'm about raising some rates. That's the last thing we ever wanted to do.
But, you know, I think the other thing to look at, I hear you, nobody around who wants to do that. And I think that's what the offense is.
Well, let me respond.
Well,
My mic was on first.
well, I've been, okay, the air in the room is everybody's air.
Yeah,
Okay, you understand? And I think we're trying to work together. If you want to work together, then you gotta listen, all of us do. And we gotta hear, all of us do. And all I can say is that, look at those systems. When we talk about separating utilities, which has come to us before as a separate managed entity, you lose all control of how rates are set and the philosophies of how to build revenue. It's no longer citizen driven. In Greenville, nobody votes for utility commissioners. City council does not appoint, am I correct?
my understanding, and I'm not fully in tune with their setup, but they have a board. And part of that board is made up of elected officials from the city of Greenville. And maybe, and part of it, but not a majority part of it.
Part of that board.
That's right, just a few
I
members.
just want you to understand what you're saying, that's all. Understand the playing field. And look at the numbers. Just look at the pure numbers. Look at the pure numbers of who has the lowest rates. And what I see consistently, regardless of how we're all feeling, because our bills are bundled, and we've had this conversation before too. Maybe we need to unbundle the bills and spend more money on mailing. So people can say, my utility bill is not, you don't have a utility bill, you got a gas bill, you got an electric bill. And you bundle the sewer, water, stormwater, and everything else stands on its own. And then that way you're comparing apples to apples, because these conversations that all of us are engaged in all the time is not legitimate. It's not, because they're looking at one bill with all kinds of stuff. That's not the citizens' fault. You know, that's a management thing that you can do something. We can do something about that, because now when I'm from Person County, and in Person County, we generate the electricity that Rocky Mount buys. But in Person County, my power bill just says Duke, and it's a number. And it might be $90 or $110. But in Rocky Mount, I'm paying $1,200 a month. That's my reality every month. But it's not one bill. It's just like you stated. And it's hard to do that with our customers because that's all they see. But that's what we put out. And I think we can do something about that part. If you want people to understand, so they understand clearly, it's not your whole utility, it's the gas bill is high this month. The electric bill is high this month. But my stormwater, my trash, what do you call that, waste? Refuse. Right. I'm just saying, those are the kind of conversations to me.
I just want to make a recommendation. We had state representative, Mr. Vizcano, who was going to make a couple of comments, but she has a hard stop at 4, so you just take a 10-minute break and then let her come in.
Before you take that break, I'd like to respond and clear the record because some false stuff was said and some fake
Hey,
numbers
trust
were
us,
said.
we gotta be respectful of the time. That's both of them important, but we gotta be very respectful of time. Cause you the one told her to stay around and get a comment. So if we're gonna be respectful, we're gonna take 10 minutes break, come back at 3:45. And then she has a hard. What's that? Ron, yes, Ron.
You talking about me, brother?
You hear what I say? I'll be outside. Is that a threat? Hey, you want to give me outside, is that a threat? Hey, you don't walk up? No, you came up to me. You don't come. Don't go there with me. I didn't come over to you.
I said, I'll be outside.
I'm going outside when I go home. Okay. I ain't going to
It's just. Not as much.
Okay.
It makes a direct impact. It'd be no different than.
Don't have that. And that, what a show your boy put on, you got that, okay?
That's to answer your question. It's true.
Like I said, you look thick there.
And recover what?
Yeah, and the rates are based on. We wouldn't have. That's what I can find.
Yeah. It just depends on how much. You got. All I need is number.
Performance, the performance guy is $80 million in the hole that affect mostly black people. And this guy's in front top running his mouth. He need to deal with where he lives at and don't make sure he don't.
I'm a
flood out.
grown ass man. You don't tell me where I can go. I've been going to the
I
company,
said you need to
one of
deal with what
the,
you.
anybody that owns this company. I've been coming to these meetings since the night. You can tell me anything about what I can go. I'm a grown ass man. So you can go.
Well, I mean, I've been.
No, I agree. And there's no body. And there's really something.
Yes, sir. Well, you got. Yeah, kind of style the camera.
That part.
Well, they're not covered costs, so, you know.
You got about 30 seconds before you ask your question about the rate.
I'll do it after, let's just do it after the meeting, that's all right though. I gotta get another cookie. That's what I
You
heard.
received a great healthy food commercial at the cooking restaurant, I'm talking, and you expecting to go to the it's kind of as a flooding motor.
I have not.
He was like, he was trying to eat vegetables and everything.
I'm working the program, Cookie Monster.
I'll come out here.
That was all good. Thanks, guys.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I didn't see him out there.
Yes, sir. I've sent you an email and a text.
So sorry, come on in.
Come here.
Yeah, Conway, good to see you again.
And I sent you something just saying, I didn't know. It says on the city signed off on this. When
These guys don't have this one. None of it is. No, what you're talking about, this project, as we say, so that's not. So these are not, this guy. I kind of, he's talking about. Right.
Hey, Charles, you ready? 3:45, you ready? Yeah. You got it. Can't do that. All right. Everybody else?
He spends time over there. It should take part of his time. If your finance department helps pay bills for the water funds. I mean, that's the part I don't know. That's the part you need to get into.
The expenditures are too.
Hey, live. We ready?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, thank you for allowing this time, Mr. Luciana, give us a few words, prior to her leaving. She has to go back to, Raleigh. But I just want to personally thank you for coming to our retreat for 2 days. Hopefully you got your money's worth.
You can stamp my card, my frequent flyer card.
Right. But, again, I just want to say, thank you for myself and the rest of the board for, coming to assist during this process.
For sure, the LGC really here, be a resource for you as you go through these kinds of things. I wasn't necessarily planning this morning to make any additional remarks. I hope I got through pretty loud and clear yesterday in terms of the message that I wanted you to take away. And because I don't work for you, I think I can speak a little bit more freely. I'm going to tell you that one of the things I feel like I'm seeing still is a fair amount of looking backwards. It's good for you to know how you got here so that you don't get here again. But the focus has to be forward. The focus has to be what decisions are you making now going forward, rather than you suggested that before, I suggested that last October. So I think there's the need to look back to avoid repeating the mistakes and the need to look forward in terms of what decisions are you making now. I unfortunately had to miss a bit of your conversation this morning when you reviewed the different budget cuts, and I'm not sure where you ended up landing, but I certainly hope that when you leave this retreat today, you will have given your city manager very clear direction on what type of budget adjustment you want him to prepare to bring to you at the March meeting. So I heard you definitely talk through some of the cuts that were proposed, and I heard some yes for this one, no for this one, but I hope that you can coalesce around, this is what we want to see. This is the budget adjustment that we want to make at the next meeting. Because it's, time's getting away and you have so much work ahead of you. But I really believe what I told you yesterday. I know that you can do this. I know that, and as my colleague Sharon said yesterday, you can be the board that lets the city fall off the cliff, or you can be the board that pulls it back. And one of you came up with afterwards, you said, we're going to be the board that helps us climb all the way over the mountain. And I think that's great. And I know that you can do it. And there's not any reason that the LGC should need to come in and make the hard decisions. And I know that you're qualified to make So I just encourage you to keep asking questions and to try to coalesce around solutions as you head into dealing with your current cash prices and dealing with your budget prices. One other thing I wanted to mention with the conversation I've had with a few of you individually this morning. Just my personal view on how you might consider changes in your salary costs. Understand that there was some discussion that I missed about you want to make permanent salary cuts. You want to reduce salaries for certain folks. You want to maybe roll back part of the class and comp study that you implemented. I'm probably don't know, have enough details to comment on your class and comp, but I will say that in general, to echo a bit of a message that my colleague Sharon gave yesterday, changes that are temporary are going to be easier on morale than changes that are permanent. So for example, furloughing staff is going to reduce their pay, but furloughs are temporary. Cutting people's salaries, even with a promise to raise them later, that's probably going to be permanent. And I think that cutting salaries in general has the potential to have a much larger hit to morale of your workforce. And you're really going to need your workforce because you're all in it together to deal with your financial crisis. And you're going to not want to lose some of your best employees. And so I would, this is not a recommendation to do one or the other. That's my observation from other units, that temporary types of measures such as furloughs, which by their nature are more temporary, may get you better buy-in and may help you keep morale up as your staff work very hard to try to improve your financial picture. Those are my last few thoughts, but I can tell that there's some comment.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. In fact, I was gonna ask Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if I might make a motion. Okay. I'd like to, move that we direct our manager to come back with, plan 3 and 4 in more detail. And, provide us with clarity around where those cuts will be and what the forecast will be, those cuts on. That is the cuts for the strategy.
I want to second that,
Second along with you.
and the reason why I second it, again, I said this morning, I made reference to it. It'll be great if we can get close to $29-30 million at the end of 2026, now the rest, 3 and 4.
Second.
May I ask if you want to put a time frame on your motion? You want them to come back from staff in?
The next meeting, I think we need to.
I think we need to have something before the March the 23rd meeting, or even March the 23rd day.
I'll amend my motion to.
I know, when we get together tomorrow sometime, about it,
Sure.
may call, special call.
You don't have to call meeting if that, it's
So we
helpful.
do that.
At the discretion of our mayor and mayor pro tem.
And I second that.
Discussion, those two, I don't have so much one sheet, are those the two that are raises the utility rate, utility bill?
Yes.
Just while they're looking, just for education, today's, I haven't looked at the calendar, but, so this now, so next week is going to be when we need it, Mr. Mayor, just so we can maybe iron out any of the issues that we may have or the details that we may.
You want to set a date now?
I think maybe, because we gotta give Cheryl some time to find out what's going on with Cheryl. So I'm thinking maybe next Wednesday or Thursday. Because I know you said you have an appointment the first of next week.
Council, I apologize, council members, I'm going to need to leave, but it sounds like, keep doing what you're doing.
Safe drive.
Thank
you.
Yes.
Take care of it.
So, realistically, I can get this, to you, in preparation for a special call meeting, next week. So like, Tuesday, Wednesday would be perfect time.
All right,
And
we'll
then-
just set for Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Yeah, Ms. Clerk, would you give the notice on that? Special call meeting to discuss options 3 and 4. Absolutely.
So you want
No,
to?
everybody go.
Wednesday would be better for me because that's the day that I meet with you all anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
So Wednesday would be perfect. Okay.
What time is best? for
So
everybody?
if. Afternoon. No, so if Councilman Black wanted to be here Thursday, is that crucial input? Yeah, so I think virtual is fine unless you absolutely want to be here. That's a.
Well, what do you want to do?
Council.
Well, let's just see. Person is always better, but, you know,
If you can't, or you can't do personality.
So you go with Wednesday.
Or whatever you said you.
Well, Wednesday is the date that if we ask Elton to make a couple of fine tuning things, then he'll be prepared to give that information to us prior to the council meeting.
So that's the thing that I was going to mention, because, outside of just this particular project, we do have a council meeting agenda that we have to prepare. And I've been out of the office for the last 2 days, so you need to get back and see what's going on and also check on Cheryl. But I'm confident that I can get you to you by the day, just up to you all which one. I think Wednesday work, but if we need to move it Thursday, that's fine too.
what can you be here in person? Thursday?
I travel.
That's fine. Thursday morning, okay for everybody?
So let me understand, Councilman Blackwell, you're saying that we're gonna need to discuss these two scenarios, right? Okay, so I'm fine with that.
Is Thursday morning good for everybody? 10
Yeah.
o'clock?
That work. What time?
10 o'clock?
Yeah. 10 o'clock?
Make it work.
Yeah.
So does,
Yes.
procedurally, does, Councilman Blackwell need to amend his motion?
Thank you. So I'll amend the motion to state that, we're asking the directing our manager to come back to us, Thursday morning at 10 a.m. with an expanded, discussion on the options 3 and 4.
Second.
Hear that microphone. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passed. So very good, thank you.
Consider none. The last item that we have today, is conversation with, David Joyner, the general manager of the event center. We didn't know how long this was gonna go on, so he's prepared to do it at another day. We can go ahead and do it now. We got it, just about an hour. Okay, let me go get that.
No, he's here. Who? Yeah, Bradley's done. He went over, he was 2.5, 2 hours, 45.
It's two separate things. Those are two things, yeah. That's utilities presentation. That's utilities. Okay. This is. Both of those utilities. All right, okay.
I'm sorry. Need some help? No, I got it. Thank you. I'm gonna move my stuff.
No, you good. No,
Oh.
All right, David, thank you for joining us today. I know you have a presentation you want to give, and then I'm sure council will have some questions as well.
Got it, thank you. Well, they're pulling that up. What I essentially wanted to do first was to just kind of explain the structure, what I'm responsible for, and, you know, put some stuff in context, especially, you know, based on the conversation and everything we heard yesterday.
And you ready to do your commercial? What can we say to hospitality for the excellent while we're here? The food, the last 2 days, the food was great. And, customer service always.
Thank you. Well, got a good take. All right, so first I want to talk about just the structure for everybody that don't know, and to explain it. We, you know, have a contract with a sports facilities company, which is set up by the city, you know, before the event center, opened. I and my team work for a sports facilities company, but through the contract that the city, has set up for us to manage the facility. We wanted to kind of go over that structure and explain that clearly on what I'm responsible for from an operating budget standpoint, and then the other costs that that are the ones that are already set in place, which the city will talk about in Kansas in the next presentation. But from my P&L standpoint, you know, I have a set P&L which we work operate under, and we have access and control to. That is different from the total expenditure of everything I put together for that. So just like I don't have access to $3 million from my operating account. That is the combined. And I'm assuming another thing that they allocate to it. This was, if you go to the next slide. So this is right now, just so you know, with, like I said, I'm with Sports Facilities Company. When I started with the company, we had about, I want to say roughly 20 properties that we manage. We now manage 81 across the country. We have 375 advisory. So those are the ones that we're doing plans for and those type of things for other communities. And that is the map over all of those, contracts and clients and facilities that we manage. So for example, we, shortly after I started here, we took over the the Virginia Beach Sports Center, which we manage. We also manage the Myrtle Beach Sports Center. We also manage a pickleball facility now in Burlington as far as our North Carolina footprint. But it's been a heavy growth. Just last week, East Texas, and they opened up essentially a rodeo and concert hall that we're also managing there. So that sports still is a big driving for a lot of these communities and states that are putting a lot of money into an effort towards sport tourism because of what it brings and economic impact and what it generates. You get the next one. So for our structure, and that's important to explain like how we're structured. We, because I know there's a lot of confusion at times around it. So as far as the facility, we only have 5 full-time staff members. That's them two, Ashley, myself, and Connie downstairs. Everybody else is part-time. All of our staff members work across the department. So for example, Kiora is responsible for booking all of the tournaments and all of the events as well as working the events. So they're not separate shifts of people that come in and work different events. So every tournament that we have, the 3 of us are here. That's every weekend. So if they Keyword just got her day off for the first time in over a month, recently because we're in the middle of tournament season. Callie also then oversees catering, but we do all the events together. We do that, you know, because there was more full-time staff. We reduced and tried to see what we could get away with and try to keep costs down and facing some of the things we saw in the market. Certain of our things were growing, but the market around us has not. And so essentially the best way to describe it is we feel like we operate in this silo in downtown where we have thousands of people coming, but for restaurants and that type of thing, that we haven't seen as much growth for amenities and some of the other stuff that was originally planned that I will talk about later. The event policies and procedures, that is a big one about how we do this. That is not just my policies and procedures, this comes from our company and the way we operate, which are best practices. I don't book any events myself, meaning that I don't have a negotiation conversation with any client. We do that for the purpose of it has to go through the sales process. It's very similar when I was at the hotels. The GM did not have a conversation with the client as far as the booking, because what you don't want to run into is the client saying, and especially in this situation, well, I just talked to David and blah, blah, blah. So I got this rate and that type of rate. We err overly on the side of caution. I have to sign off. Obviously, I have a date behind the scenes, all the cost structure with them as far as how we're going to approach it. But it has to go through the sales people, and that's for sponsorships, that is for any and all events that are booked in this facility. Give you a great example. There has not been a tournament to date that I have been the one who bartered with them directly. So they go through the org, they bring it to me, then we do it behind the scenes as far as our conversation, and they take it back to the client. When the White House came this past go around, they called Kelly directly from the White House. I did not have the conversation with the White House team. I met certain members of the Secret Service that I needed to meet to talk about the operations and stuff they needed from security. But the whole negotiation goes through the salesperson and it's clean that way. We track it that way and we track everything, the phone calls, the emails, we have documentation for everything. Even now, when you call and it says your call may be monitored for quality assurance, we do that for the reason because we were running into situations where people said, well, I said this, or called on this date, and we wanted just to have as much backup as possible. The overwhelming majority of our staff. So when I say 42 part-time staff, that is if we have, they're not just here every day, because we're an event, so they work based on the event. So I'll give you a perfect example. This past weekend was our 8th tournament, right? So far this year, with staff, the way it typically works, staff comes in about 5 o'clock in the morning, depending, 5 or 5:30, depending on what time doors open. Typically doors open either 7 or 8 a.m. based on the tournament structure. Once the staff gets here, they're here all day. We don't have a second or third shift staff that comes in and that type of thing. Obviously, there's certain people who can, or they work full-time jobs, like we have teachers or other people who might work somewhere else who like working here, then they come in. But so I'll give you a good example. When we had the barbecue throwdown festival here, and we were looking at the apparatus that accompany that, we don't have that. We were not set up to do it that way because they wanted it to be more of like as much as we could do ourselves from a business standpoint. Some of that was, I'll get to that later, it was too extreme. And even goes against the practice that we see in most of our facilities that I can talk about as I get to it. But most of it is, so I'll give you a perfect example. When I took over here, there was a plan for us to do parking, right? And the manager remembered this because he was in the conversation with me. Well, we didn't have a way to take anything to any of the parking lots. So we had a storage room down the street that they were using a forklift to try and carry all the equipment here. And so those were the type of things that we had to work on and add and find different ways to accomplish. But we found ways to either mitigate it or ways to where we had to pay for it directly. The other piece of that as relates to staffing is we don't budget. So especially I'll use contract labor as a perfect example. We can't put in a contract labor budget in the same way, say other departments do. So, but that is where it hits. So regardless, we account for it and you see it, but it wasn't the sense of like we knew for a fact we're going to have X amount of people. A lot of that is contract labor for us. A lot of stuff was going there. So I'll give you an example. Basketball tournaments. We have to have scoreboard operated for basketball tournaments as a part of the rent they pay for it. And the rent, we're not going to keep these people on full time. So this is part-time staff or people who could come in and do that. So they're just paid that day, with W-9. I mean, that's contract labor for those events. Same thing as we might use additional housekeepers from the Express Professionals, is a temp agency we use. A lot of those people, they just come in on this weekend and that type of thing. Security costs was a big one at the time. There was a bunch of, especially back in 23, 24, there was a lot of discussion and debate around the, as it relates to security, where the RMPD was going to do it and could they do it. We switched at one point then to the Edgewater County Sheriff. All the agencies did a good job with Edgewater County Sheriff, especially we had to pay directly. Those costs were not budgeted for. And when I mean that, I mean them the outside. We budgeted for them on the inside, we didn't budget for them on the outside because you can't charge the guests for them having to be safe in your town. When the guests are paying, if it's an outside festival, then yes, if we were the sports complex, that would make sense. But if the guests are in their facility, what happened was we were parking them 6 to 8 blocks up and down Atlantic Avenue. We didn't have any, and we were taking it in cash. And so we didn't have any way to manage that. So we had to have security to give those blocks. And none of that was, particularly planned for, but we had to do that to be able to generate the effect. Just to explain some of the structure. All of our finances, our payables, everything we do goes through the city finance team. All they oversee everything. I cannot sign a check that is approved without them approving it. Every dollar that we spend, every receipt, all that goes through the city finance team, and we work with them. Our home office finance team works with them on a regular basis as far as making sure we're following the policies that we're achieving. Next slide. This is, while we're on the structure standpoint, this is what the settlement looks like and where we get our numbers from. So this was he was just here the February 28th, March 1st weekend. This particular client is going to have three events with us this year. He pays $17,500 in rent every time he comes and has an event here. And that's the way it's structured. So we charge them rent and then they make money off of their ticket sales from the event. In addition to the rent, we charge them for concessions that we keep all of, meaning the city. We also keep all the parking revenue, which also goes to the city. The way we get our numbers when we're saying how many people came and that type of thing, you see is based on that comes out of the computer system. It's not something we make up. We're not using clickers or that type of thing. It's all based on who came and paid. They have to put in our box office to be able to have an event here. So when you see 106 tickets sold at $20 or $253, those are the prices that the tournament directors set up themselves. That's all. The tournaments know it, but that comes a lot of time locally because people don't understand it. These are not our events. We sold them the space for them to have their event. It's essentially like having a wedding. It's just a tournament. Like the same thing. Same way I won't tell you how to run your wedding. We don't tell them, what they can and can't charge. But so some tournaments charge $45 for a weekend pass. Some tournaments charge $20. That's their business model, how they do that. We track all that because the city is $2.50 per ticket in addition to the rent. And then that's where you'll see where it breaks down the athletic trainer fee, the vendor, concessions coupons. So if the tournament director wants to give them concession coupons for their staff, we also charge for that. And then that's how that comes up. Then they get, as you see what was left with the 53,000, that's what goes to them from their ticket sales. That was their event that they put on, that they sold tickets to. The city made the other money from the rent and the ticket fee in addition to the concession sales and the parking revenue and any other things charged for. You get the next slide. This is the catering contract, so that you can see that and see how that's set up as well. Same thing, everything has to go through the contracting system. We are set up differently from the other facilities in that standpoint. I'll give you a good example. Well, I heard the conversation earlier about for the facilities. I am excited to see that breakdown too, because, for example, I know for a fact the Hero Center, when you're breaking out revenue and that type of thing and what they charge, we're charging market rate. We have to. That's how we were set up to do it. As you can see, the Cheesecake Factory is for the Christmas party, the rent. And when it says discount, that's just where we negotiated with them, come down on the rent. And we track it. We don't hide, we track it. This is what we wanted. We started high, came on the issue with them, because they had an event for 650 people at $38.95 per person. In addition to that, their service charge, wait staff, bartender, security, all of that, their bill paying $48,000, 586 cents, and that all goes to the city. So that's how the same thing, they have to pay a deposit. Every event that happens in this facility has to pay a deposit. We do not count it as an event if you don't pay a deposit. So a lot of times what will happen is, especially, we'll have conversations, people will come and say, well, I want something on this table. If it's 2 weeks later and you haven't paid a deposit or 3 months later, then we can't count it. And we do that, so when we say we have 20 events or 30 events, it's because they paid a deposit and we have that stuff on file. Go to the next. These are the numbers we closed out with the fiscal year 25, based on the event numbers. This was just the amount of events we had. We had 28 total sporting tournaments, so we had a packed tournament season. 347 total catering events. That includes anything that was a banquet and anything in the meeting room that even served. There were 3 concerts, 6 entertainment events. The Pilgrimage Conference is the state Methodist. We have a 3-year contract with that event. It's a really good event. North Carolina Wesleyan graduation. The president came. Then the local programming is because a part of our work is to still do local programming. The difference is for our facility, unlike the Imperial Center or the community center, we have to charge for everything. So there's a certain level of flexibility that we do and do not have, and that we have to do. So we still try to work, and we work a lot with what we did with Parks and Rec, to put on like the high school jamboree. The other events that you'll see here are little things like pickleball and those type of things just to open up the facility. But even all those things carries a cost with them that we charge. And you'll see the bar revenue. And we wanted to make sure we talked about that as we get to the other revenue was 147,000 for the year. That's alcohol sales. We sell alcohol at tournaments. We sell alcohol, obviously, at private events. We sell alcohol at concerts and stuff like that. And it's not a big hit. The minimum number of attendees is 110,937. The economic impact numbers, which is the larger point of why, the facility exists, hotel, restaurant, all that kind of stuff, that impact was 25.8 million. What is that? The economic impact was 25.8 million. And I'll also say that on the economic, I'll talk about that later. We work with Nash County and Trumbull for all the hotels that our guests stay at are in Nash County. We don't have any hotel in Nashville County that they can stay at. So our guests stay at the hotel in Nash County. So all that revenue, because I knew there was a conversation which I was hopeful about last year, but I think that got stalled as far as the hotel tax that you all were trying to work with the Denville Assembly on, because that is something where a lot of these facilities, and especially I'll use Virginia Beach and the Raleigh Convention Center is a great example. They're about to do a multi-million-dollar renovation, excuse my words. And that facility is set up that is probably closest to what I would describe. We're a smaller version of that. And that facility, same thing, funded the same way we are, and that type of thing. And they're about to do that in addition to, because they get the hotel tax. They control that hotel tax, and that's where they use that money. Here, we're not, the city, when I say it's not directly getting it that way. And that is part of the conversation, and we're part of some of the issues because typically that hotel tax is what is used to, and across our facilities in the network. Myrtle Beach is a great example. Virginia Beach is a great example. That money is that the tourism offices then give them some of that back to go towards maintenance of the facility and some of the bigger costs that we have to carry, right? The direct revenue was 2.45, and this is from my P&L. This is not the other stuff that P&L will go over with you related to Councilman Dawson's question. This was the direct revenue was 2.45. Gross margin after with expenses was 5.7. Operating expenses 1.96, and net operating loss of 1.39. And so the way we explain that is there are certain things that we have to do to execute the events. There are certain things that we were hoping, I wasn't here in the very beginning, or envision what we're going to happen or grow with the facility that has not happened, that we have to carry so it was never envisioned from the beginning that we, as in my staff, would have to be up and down the streets and doing all the things. We bought that equipment out of our operating budget. There's a lot of equipment in the facility that we had to course correct and then just wear and tear and those type of thing that solely came out of that. I didn't know when I took over the facility, especially with our parking apparatus now, that we were going to do that. We're doing that and it works really well, but you had to be set up to do it. And I didn't have a cone to put in the street my first weekend when I took over. All of that we've started to grab. So even when you see the cones down the street and the side, that's all stuff. And city manager was the city manager at the time, but he helped a lot with us finding creative ways or innovative ways, and then sometimes we just had to eat it to be able to get that stuff done. Next,
Mr. Jordan,
yeah,
would you like to go through your whole presentation and 10 questions?
it's up. I don't get it. So if you want to ask a question, you can.
Okay. Not you, I wanted to ask a question today. I know we have council members here. I'm pro event center. And also, you know, I invested heavily around this event center, so I definitely the one who want to see it win the event center. So I just wanted to get questions. Councilman Blackwell, this may be good for you. What were the original goals, like when the event center opened? And if we intentionally located it on Edgecombe side, and we know Edgecombe County is one of the most economic distressed counties in the state. It's on the worst of the worst list. I want to know, what was your original goal for the event center by locating it here in Edgecombe County?
Well, location, the physical location where we are today was a recommendation from the consultants. What that council decided is that we needed to jumpstart downtown. And we needed something to build momentum. And so at a retreat, a council retreat in Wilmington, I believe, we discussed the idea, the concept of a convention center. And we started going to each retreat. We went to a different city in North Carolina that had convention centers. And we determined that that's the right way to go, because what we also found out is that wherever convention centers are located, that there was a development mass that would take place about a half a mile around that facility. And so we thought that the best thing to do was we would put it downtown. Our manager at that time was Charles Penny. He put a bid out to developers around the country to come to us with concepts, come to us with marketing data, so it wouldn't just be somebody trying to sell their way of doing things. And SFA, I think, was that entity that gave us our first data. But we also, as a council, had determined whatever we did downtown, we needed to be intentional about building Edgecombe County, because it had been intentionally left out of development. It redlined very clearly. Dilapidated very clearly. And our first development project that I can recall, I was here when we were Imperial Center with the market tax credits, but it was Douglas Block that we started our downtown renovation. We felt that it was historically accurate and it was contemporary of the time, that we should look at reinvesting in downtown Rocky Mount in Edgecombe. And it was the consultants, I believe, that came to us with a list of acceptable sites.
I'm gonna tell you, it's 422. And if, I appreciate what Luke said, it's a whole lot to that, but, I don't know how long your presentation, but I'm ready. We're gonna get the 5. You know, we want to get the presentation that you have.
I have questions.
But
So just,
I'm saying.
Jonah, you can just go through the presentation and take the questions at the end.
Okay. So January, to now, just so that we kicked off the year, we have a full, turn the calendar. I want to say that is not done lightly. One, and most, of our facilities, they go to big sports conferences and stuff like that. That is the power of the network, that we have. We cut that out, because of cost and the save on cost, given the climate here. But our corporate team, as long as other GMs from other facilities go and they take us as a part of our information and help. So the AAU tournament season really goes from January to June, would be best to say. And we have a good packed calendar of things. I'll put it in perspective. We had in January, we lost 2 weekends because of the snow. The one weekend we had in February, one of the gentlemen, the day he had to cancel that last weekend because of the snow, went ahead and paid us deposit down, moved everything to that second weekend that we had open in February. And he is the person that's paying 3 different events, of $17,500. And I say that, I don't say it lightly, that is above market rate that we are charging people to come to this area. And Two, we are the only facility that are remotely charging, that way. I am very interested to see some of them. I can tell you, for example, at the outdoor complex, a lot of their events, they don't charge at all. So there's baseball tournaments and stuff that are coming to the outdoor complex, which is staffed and ran by the city. They don't charge at all. I've known that for years about a hotel, and then Nash County will give bid money to a lot of the teams from Nash County Travel and Tourism to play out there at the outdoor complex. That is, we are not set up to do bid fees, and that is a very common thing. So when the Raleigh Convention Center caught fire, one of the tournaments that called us about a date immediately said, well, we weren't paying rent. Because a lot of the bigger, places and markets will do that. There's a Nike tournament that we were talking to that played at one of our facilities in Texas. Texas, the state government gave them money to come to the tournament because what they wanted to have in bed. They want people staying in the hotel, they want the restaurant money. That's all most of these facilities are set up to be the lost leaders that they are. 16 catering events so far. This is from January to date. We've had 137 teams. That was just last weekend. That was our biggest tournament so far this year. We've got a bunch of more tournaments throughout the season. We have hit over 360,000 in concession sales 3 times already so far this year. That was a high bar that we had set for ourselves to try to help with revenue, and that was done with the people sitting behind me and then working all day to make that happen. UNC School of Government, North Carolina State has already had events here. And then in addition to that, we still do the pickleball. We have a volleyball club who uses us as their host facility. The volleyball club is in Wilton, and they use our venue as a host facility. They were just here last night, along with the new one that was also in there as well. Parking revenue, this is something that we have been aggressive about as additional revenue for the facility. So far, that's from January to now, is $107,822. Why that's important? Parking was the biggest topic of conversation. I have the parking ideal. No, the fact that we were able to pull that off has been solely just finding areas and improving it. That is why, especially in 23, 24, that's when that kind of exploded. What was happening was we were in the middle of events and calling the county manager and calling places and asking them, can I use your lot? Because we didn't have anywhere else for the people to park. And our guests pay $10 per person to park. It is cash. It's been cash parking from the beginning because we're not set up to be able to have the terminals and that kind of thing up and down the lots. That's a lot of people paying to park at downtown Rocky Mountain, which means also when we're giving you the data on how many people are here, we're basing that on the numbers that we have taken in. Concession sales from year to date so far is 341. The rentals, that's what they're paying to rent the facility. That is 170,000. And then FEC, that's the game day, the arcade area. So far, that's 13,000, and the catering event so far is 67,000. You can go to the next slide. These are, these are testimonials from people who are, while we are getting the event. Most of our event traffic is a combination of people from out of town, and then with catering events is a combination of Wilson, Rocky Mount, Durham, Greenville, Raleigh, and people from Virginia and South Carolina. Catering is an area we've been focusing heavy on. When I say catering, I mean conventions. We were trying to, and that is a big market for it that we've seen a lot of growth. So good example as far as my budget. So my budget framework is different from most of the department's budget framework. But we have a P&L. We have to operate, like a business. But I also have restrictions on things that I just can't budget that I know we're going to need, because it wasn't set up within the framework of how. So there are things that we have to account for that we're putting on a line item just so it's accounted for, but we don't have we didn't budget for because I can't. They don't allow me based on the framework of what they were saying, we got to try to keep in. So catering events in December, I always budget aggressively as a goal. So, and with my team, whether we know where that market is at the moment. So we budgeted 250,000 for events in December. We ended up hitting a little over 200,000. Well, when I budgeted that, we didn't know what those events were going to be. This wasn't repeat business that I already knew. This was them doing sales calls. Merck Pharmaceutical and a lot of those kind of companies that we have that are having those events here because they went and did sales calls and attracted them business into the facility. Just to explain how it works. You got to thank them.
It's on my core association. We held one of our 40 community leaders here today at the Rocky Mountain Center and had an excellent time.
Our special guest speaker is the Secretary of Transportation, Daniel Johnson. So we were fortunate to have something great venue to entertain the secretary. But the layout was great. The AV system was just what we needed. And the food we had for lunch was outstanding. So, much appreciation to the event center for your hospitality.
This one actually came to last night. Why is it important? Because it's also good for some of our expenses and costs and what we do. Well, we sell it an experience. People aren't coming here solely for the gym. If that was the case, well, a lot of other facilities would get some of that business we get. And if that was the case, we would have lost a lot of business, which I was worried about at first when the Myrtle Beach when the Virginia Beach Sports Center opened, because I assumed that a lot of that, because it's Virginia Beach. We worked really hard to create a experience here, for people, but it was also stuff we had to be innovative about. So we don't know this person. It just happened to post last night. We were here in the office, and they mentioned the shuttle, the bar, the karaoke, which we charge $5 per person for, the cornhole, all that stuff that we put outside. We did all that because what we saw was, well, I got 2,000 and 3,000 people down here and they have nothing to do. There has not been a big coalescing around capturing and building on that amount of people that's in town. And typically we have the state tourism director come here and he actually talked to the Edcom tourism team at the time. The argument he made, it is our job to bring the people here. Then it's supposed to be a handoff. Normally that's tourism offices. Here it will be the downtown office as well, who creates that experience. I'll give you the perfect example. USA South, when I was as a manager with the Gateway Center Hotel Complex, when USA South first came here, there was a big push. The president of the college came and met with us at the time, asked the hotels to pay sponsorship money, which we did. We did all of that. One tournament weekend at this facility brings more people to come to USA South and sell out the hotels more. The hotel rates, if you check right now, for this weekend, most of them are sold out or they're over $200. I checked 3 of them yesterday myself. When we gave 5,000, USA South is great. I'm not knocking it. I just want to explain the difference from the events and how they come in this area. Well, why sports tourism especially is something that so many communities are sought after, because parents are going to pay to come watch their kids play. It is a good base that we know we have. I'm not even worried about it for next year. The goal for us is constantly building on. You can go to the next one. Or just keep going up, Larry. Larry, so this is the gentleman that is paying $17,500 3 times a year here. He also has already paid deposits for the subsequent years. Following. And again, the deposit for tournament events is $1,500 per event. So if you come to us and say, I want to lock this date down for the next 5 years, what you have to do is go ahead and pay us a deposit for each of those events for the next 5 years, or we don't consider it. Same thing with catering room based on their room rental, we have to pay half of the room rental. Larry's been great for us. He has been phenomenal. He is out of Bloomington. He does not have to come here. He also has events at our other facilities and facilities across the country. So that is a clear sign of that. People like the product. Our biggest challenge, which I'll get to later, and complaints that we get, which also hindering the growth of the business, is based around the lack of an experience around the area. And we do get several complaints about how certain parts of the area look, as far as abandoned houses and that type of thing. You can go. Parking, to show you what I'm talking about with parking, now that we have, we use the city-owned Faith, we park cars over there every weekend. The old Piece of Paradise lot, we go down that far every weekend. That's this, I keep saying Central League, but Frank's Key now. We utilize that lot every weekend. The gravel lot right in front of us, that is also where cars park. And then we go the grass lot here at the corner and all the way down past those apartments that were built. We had to go sometimes to Rocky Mountain Wilson Gym to utilize the traffic. Then we have to man that and secure that all day and night, when these people again are paying $10 per person to park in the parking lot. You get a nice one. To show you what it looks like, this is from just this past Saturday. This is about 8 o'clock at night, starting down at that end of the street.
David, did you all have the drone? That's a pretty nice video. Did you all do that?
Our, videographer. And so when we hear a lot of times, and it is a frustrating thing for us about people aren't, or I drive by and I don't ever see the event, that type of thing, and, or, you know, people aren't here, I mean, they're here. They have to be here. Our challenge is not being capitalized on, which also affects the growth and some of the other events for it. Sponsorship is another, area that we're really focused on, to grow in revenue now that we are in a better, you can't sell a sponsorship if the brand is bad. So when I first took over the facility, sponsorship was the last thing we were thinking about because most of it was a fight about the facility. So who's gonna pay to be a sponsor? What we've seen now, just to explain to you, all the people that you see when you see the sign, they pay for those, which is how we're set up. That brings up a conversation a lot of times when certain restaurants and stuff will be like, well, you know, how do we can't just let them in because we're not set up for that. The city's mandate to us was to charge for sponsorship. So Brightspeed, that thing they did in the elevator, it's a 50,000 3-year partnership. North Dakota Wesleyan, it's a 15,000 3-year partnership. Wawa had a 5,500 investment. Pepsi, 20,000 a year. Residence Inn, Courtyard, Duke, that's the Fairfoot Inn, the Holiday Inn. First Carolina Management, that's the Holiday Inn and Hampton Inn, all of them pay per year, and they renew it each year, to have their name in the facility. They're in a lot of talks, actually, they're in a lot of talks with a lot of other people, about growing that. And one thing we do feel like we're finally in a good place to be is to look at a naming rights sponsor. The naming rights is where a lot of facilities, once you get a naming right, that helps with a lot of the stuff that you're talking about as far as the debt and as maintenance, and especially with us not getting that substantial amount of tourism dollars from that. With that being said, I do want to sidebar one thing, the Nash County Travel and Tourism Team are great partners to us and do work with us within the confines that they can. But as far as we don't get those big dollars from TDA and those places like other municipalities get from their tourism office that they control. That is something we're working a lot on because that's just money that just comes in and tied to it. And just so you know, when they do these sponsorships, they have to pay for that. We don't pay that out of ours. They have to pay for that. The upfit for whatever they want to do. Go to the next. Christy Candy, I wanted to use her as an example. Christy Candy is a great partner, but that business especially, she, in my estimation, probably has the worst parking situation. And she gives this a significant amount of our business. But it's because we can't force the people to go to anybody's business. We can put the information out, our partners, that is stuff that parents are not, make those decisions on social media, following trends. Christy does a phenomenal job with that, but also working with us, you know, as a partner. And so in the middle, you can't park in front of her business. You can't park right beside her business. You have to park somewhere else and then follow it in between other businesses. So yeah, it was difficult and at times, you know, kind of hard to understand when another business a lot closer would say, well, the guest, you know, didn't have anywhere to park, but this business, which has, again, to me, the worst parking situation, she does good. And one night it was about 8 o'clock at night and I was checking the lots and some young volleyball players stopped me and they were like, "We're looking for this place we found on TikTok." But that's where she did her job, marketing her business on TikTok, and she's grown it significantly. But also she's been a great partner with us because our guests love her facility. And the thing is, if they don't like having things to do, if there's not a lot for them to do, that's where I get concerned, especially when a lot of other communities are rapidly trying to build these facilities and not having conversations about they want to subsidize. They know it's going to be, they just want the heads of bed. Some facilities, communities right near us have already reached out, and I know various conversations that are in planning process. And not to mention, I know the mayor probably can attest the number of calls he gets or the number of people that came to this facility for tours. Henrico is a perfect example up in Virginia. The Henrico Center opened after us. It's bigger than our facility. They have been giving out bids like crazy and having like, so when you see the NCAA had a track meet at the Virginia Beach Sports Center, the tourism office paid a bid for that. They didn't pay the rent. We are not in a position to do that. So all of the events we have, people pay us rent for. Case in point, the outdoor complex. We can't do what the outdoor sports complex does. Everybody has to pay us rent. We also can't do what the Imperial Center does and charge next to nothing for rent. We have to charge market rate rent kind of to get to where we need to get and to try to reduce that. But at the same time, the difficult part for us is the more we grow and the things around us haven't grown, we've having to take on more costs to do so to be able to execute the event. The more parking and the more people that I'm bringing down here, we had to figure that out of how to stack that, how to have people out there, how to secure it. Because ultimately I'm responsible for that as well as my team. I'm fortunate that I have people who like to work these hours and do that. There are some nights, and we work really well with the Rec County Police Department right now. But once they leave the shift, which was for the internal part of it, then our team, along with the 2 security guards we hired from a private company, we help with the patrol and secure the parking lots. You can go to the next one. That's economic impact, the definition of what I'm talking about. This quote is from the Nash County Travel and Tourism Director. The events and tournaments hosted at the Rocky Mountain Event Center are a key driver for our local hospitality industry. By consistently bringing visitors who stay overnight, eat in our restaurants and shop locally, these events provide a reliable boost to our hotel occupancy and tax revenue. The activity is vital to the health of our local business and local economy. You got a nice one. This is data that our company pays for through a system called Placer AI. It was actually something, Alan Matthews had talked to me some years back that he really wanted the city to do to like help track. And it's where they use AI and the mobile data of your location to track where people are going. It helps us to know too when we're going after sponsorship. Case in point, there in conversation, I think it's fair to say, with Buffalo Wild Wings. I don't know the manager of Buffalo Wild Wings. I've been there. I actually went to Buffalo Wild Wings as soon as she met the GM at Buffalo Wild Wings for 2 days in a row. They came right here and brought our team free lunch and food and dropped it off because they were so appreciative for the amount of business that he let us know that they get weekend after weekend from our event. This shows you and it helps us kind of understand the visitor journey, where they start at a lot of times before they get to the facility and a lot of times where they leave. You'll see the hotel, Washington Street Grill. I'm assuming that's just still in the location. That place will be closed for a long time for this place, down the street. But you'll see where someone went to the Imperial Center and then where they'll leave. You'll see Chick-fil-A, obviously, at the top, and that type of thing. Pizza and Jeffrey's Crossing. So essentially, then they go to Nash County, where they go to a lot of the restaurants and stay at a lot of the hotels. Same thing on the other side, it shows you the properties and foot traffic, and this is all tracked by the location data. And that helps us be able to kind of gauge who we want to work with and where they're coming from, where they're going. You go to the next one. This is a good example where I talk about like with big fees. So when I first got here, there was a gymnastics tournament that was a 3-day event. And over that 3-day event, it was, I think their total bill might came to like $27,000. But when you broke out how expensive it was for us to do the event, we had to take the gym floor up, which is another thing that is a cost that we have to do to be able to do certain things. It just didn't make sense. And so I was trying to creep up on their rates. They were not happy about that. And so all of that is direct email that says that they have that now at the Raleigh Convention Center. We have a volleyball tournament that weekend that pays more money and we make significantly more money for, but they would have been able to move that to the Raleigh Convention Center because again, they're in situations that we're not in. They're paying a lot of these places are paying these facilities and events to come to them. And I just want everybody to keep that in mind. So, because it seems like sometimes it's a catch-22. We got to make more revenue directly, but then we're getting pushed back constantly about like what the rental rates are. I have to charge above market rates to be able to hit these things. And especially with us not having a lot of stuff to support us doing that work to make it more attractive for them to want to come, which somebody asked last year about championship events. Championship events go to destination areas or go to areas where there's a lot for people to do and people to hang out and that type of thing. That's part of that. So take the point, we'll get some of these events during the tournament season. And then in June, especially like with basketball, then you see they're down in Myrtle Beach at our property and other places like that. You go to the next one. This is what it looks like. This is what most of the RFPs for events look like that come through. These we do not bid on. The same thing applies to concerts. we have, in our network, we have several amphitheaters and places like that that we manage for facilities. Sand Mountain in Alabama is a great example. But in addition to the amphitheater, in addition to the subsidy that they give them to run the facility, and actually there, we run their Parks and Rec and all of that. There is also a $700 and some $1,000 set aside fund for them to use to buy talent. Because you have to have money to buy the acts. And usually they run about for a good show, it's gonna cost you about $100,000. By the time is the travel, the band, you know, and that type of thing, and all the equipment that goes with it. But I just want you to see what it looks like. These we don't do. So when people, because a lot of times people are like, why you do this, or why don't you get this time tournament? Why don't you get time tournament? Well, this, we see it all the time because it comes through. But this is what the specifications look like that they send out to the city. Minimum of 20,000 square feet, unobstructed space, seating capacity, internet power judge, and then meeting space, 3 meeting rooms, 1 meeting room, 30 parking passes per day. The company production responsibility is to manage their competition. The host city's responsibility, venue space, operational staff, hotel coordination, ground transportation, daily hospitality, free event site. All of that is normal, but then we don't do that. We're not set up to do that. We don't have a budget for that. We work with them like we do anybody, like you gotta pay rent. We work with them the best we can to then provide a great experience on top of that. But that is what the trends are. And that actually happens at a lot of our facilities and then within the network. You go to the next one. This is the last slide. I think the biggest thing for me as it relates to what we're seeing, we are seeing good momentum as it relates to the events bookings and the revenue. Our bigger challenges are there are things that related to equipment, maintenance of the facility, a lot of things that have come up that we've had to deal with. We had a thing with our utility bill that we had to deal with back the other year where it doubled out of the blue because it was some issue with calculation. So where we were budgeting and planning for about 15,000 a month, it went up to about 30,000. It's been there since. That was in the middle of the budget year. In addition to that, there's like just the normal wear and tear, the leaks and a whole lot of other stuff that has happened operationally, which we have to fix and get done. So we have that challenge. And then the bigger challenge is what I've noticed in a lot of our other markets is there's a strategic cohesion that we don't have. So Raleigh is a beautiful example. When you see them speak and they talk about the Raleigh Convention Center, Red Hat, the Martin Marietta Center, all that stuff goes under the same people. They manage it, they have a director, but they work out as a team. It was said in the beginning that there would be cohesion like with us and the Imperial Center, but none of that has happened. It's not the fault of the staff there. There was no plan in place to be able to do that effectively. And so there is, I think, some easy money that we are leaving out on the table constantly because, for example, in for the venue we have in Ohio, at Cedar Point, they run an indoor facility, and that's a problem venture that we do there. They run an indoor facility, but then they have like essentially an outdoor complex. You know, well, what they wisely did was said all the food and beverage at the complex need to be sold through the facility that we have, so then the city can maximize that revenue. It's like that kind of strategy, like that's kind of place. The same thing with Imperial Center. There's no formal connection with any of us. In addition to that, we just don't. We still to this day we do not have. This weekend was a perfect example. There was thousands of people here. There was absolutely no experience that was built for them. Not even a sign, beyond what we put out, like welcoming them to the area. Some of these communities, when they go in, there'll be banners on the road and all this type of stuff because they want to capture as much as money from these people as possible because that's why they're here. They're here to spend money and they spend a lot. If we're doing 60,000 in concession sales inside the facility, then imagine, how much more we capture because the more people come, the better they liked it, then you can build on that. The goal is to build your spectator count and have them stay a longer night in the facility. And then the other, like I said, a lot of the complaints we get from our guests are two biggest ones would be that. And then the other one is just people, the tournament directors actually pulled them aside last year and talked about just the eyesores around us as far as, when is that, it just looks, some of it looks bad. It makes people feel like it looks unsafe. We have people that park all the way down Holly Street every week. So that this isn't, so there's all of our parking that we control They fill up PNC's parking lot every weekend. They will park double-sided down the street that they're not supposed to. The reason these cones are down the street is because emergency personnel had come to us, not long after I got here when we started picking up. They couldn't get down the streets because there was so many cars parked the wrong way on each side. Well, those aren't things necessarily that were in my purview, but we had to fix it. And so we figured out, and in some cities, they would have just had meters out there that you could have been charging them for the parking revenue. So a lot of that of what we're talking about is things that we've done and in spite of my focus and my team's focus has been to generate as much revenue as possible and realistically, try to every year, which we do year over year, try to decrease, that net operating income as much as we can. But there are realities to execute the event in this market, and alone, that we just have to do. So, questions?
David, thank you. I appreciate it. You mentioned me. What specifically did I say yesterday that caught you off guard, I guess?
No, I didn't call me off guard. It was like the point where you were making about that you wanted Ken to talk about.
I wanted financials from day one because the pro forma was provided, it stated certain things. And so forth, and then we had COVID come in, hadn't met that. But my main comments was not applicable really to you. It was more dealing with the financials that we were given. Because I got one that shows, cash flow impact on the city with debt services, nothing to do with you, 7.8. Then I've got another one that shows it was, if you had the debt service, it's only 4. In the expenses exceeding revenue is only 4 million.
Yeah.
So there's a big differential there, and that's a concern. So I need, as a council person, need to know where we are there.
And I would say, I agree. My point with that is I wanted to make sure I explained my part of it.
Sure.
And what we did in this, because I think sometimes from not you, but the public, I'll get asked questions about that part of it that I don't control the day to day.
I understand your management company. In fact, as you well know, I mean, when this whole thing's, you and I would have lunch often, you know where I was coming from. So, we need to make this successful. But we also need to look after, especially in the interest of the city where we are right now. We gotta look after the cash. So,
Absolutely.
and so that's what I'm trying to get clarity on from the city, not from you as SFM.
No, I make sense.
David, first of all, thanks for what you and your team have done and continue to do. A lot of times I'm out and about, Saturdays and Sundays. And if I'm at Chick-fil-A or Dunkin' Donuts in the morning or wherever, if I notice a family, one time, I'll go up to them and say, well, you by chance just visiting through our town? No, we're at the, volleyball, basketball tournament. And the only complaint, major complaint, is this is our first year. And there's hardly any good signs. To get to the complex. Nothing about, we got the dilapidated houses. Once you get off 64, coming in from.
You talking about the directional sign? You talking about directional signage?
Yeah, something that.
No, that does come up.
One man said, well, you got this small sign.
Yeah.
The most recent comprehensive audit draft. I would commend y'all for exceeding your revenue projections. $9,000 over the $2,150,000.
Oh, yeah, about fiscal year 24.
Good job. Good job. No, this is for year ending June 25.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, see, and that's the right, what'd you say the revenue was?
$2,159,000 actually. 9,000 over the final budget.
No. That's where, to
Answer
your
my
point, right, I get confused because I know the point, but from my opinion, we did too much forward. And
this is
so,
where my concern is. And it must be of some other costs. Budgeted cost 2.6 million. Actual cost 3.9.
Yeah, so that is not, that is,
That's, I think that's, so we will get a better understanding
yeah,
of that, maybe Ken or somebody else will have to present it. That's where we need a better explanation.
I agree. So the P and L that I, like I said, the P and L that I control and my part of it. So that I already would total expenses and that's, it was like 1.8, 1.9. That other stuff is other things that are part of it that are allocated to.
And it could be, extra cost of our security, the police provide security, I don't know.
Yeah. No, and that's what I'm saying, that those, my point is, I don't, beyond the part of my total expenses, that, so when I saw allocated, when I saw the audit, and, you know, excuse me, the manager and, and Ken, I called them both, because I was like, where is this $3 million number coming from? Because I didn't know, but then looking at it and looking at our account team, they were like, well, there's two different, you didn't say there's other stuff allocated to it and what it is versus the P and L that I look at from an operating standpoint.
Well, I think bottom line is, we're given budget information, et cetera. At times, there's a need for us to drill down, not just the summation number, but what comprises that.
Yeah, I think the context is extremely important.
And I wanna, thank you as well for what you're doing in your staff. I was asking a question of the councilman that brought it here, what was the priorities, as far as Edgecombe County? And I understood it was to spur development in Edgecombe County. And from listening to your presentation, I don't know if you were given those marching orders or those priorities, because to me, I heard you say that was to make as much money as you could for the event center. If you was given that goal, then, I think you're doing great. But from my understanding, and that's just to the council more so than you. And the numbers that I got, that event center was gonna cost the city, because you know we're in a financial crisis. So it's not more so about you, it's more so about the numbers. So the numbers are saying that the event center is causing the taxpayers, this is with debt services, 3.8, almost $3.9 million, per year. That's the number that I received on January the 21st, that the event center would cost for the, fiscal year of 26. So when I look at it, and I understand when you said lost leaders, because it's a lot of event spots as lost leaders.
The majority.
And majority of them. So when I look at Edgecombe County, and I said Edgecombe County is one of the most economic stressed counties, and we're on the worst of the worst list. A lot of times it's because money doesn't stay in the community long. So even if you go to the places that they call the hood, you have stores, a lot of Arab stores and things that comes into the neighborhood, they make money, but the money stays in the neighborhood for 6 hours and then it goes out. So when you have Edgecombe County here and you look all around the event center, you know, it's not much benefit. And when I say that, that is any indictment on you. You know, I had Ed with Nabs, he did a beautiful coffee shop and a sandwich shop, but if it wasn't given to you as a marching orders to make sure the businesses around it succeed, then if it was, your orders was given to make as much money as you can, then you're doing your job, and you're doing a good job. But the businesses around here, you know, of Edgecombe County, I don't see them benefiting. And when I use the analogy of the money staying in the community for 6 hours and then it's going out to those hotels on the Nash County side. It's going out to those restaurants. So Edgecombe County, I would love to see the economic impact of me talking to people, businesses, and to my constituents. They can afford to do an event at the event center when they want to do their family reunions. And if your orders were to make as much money as you can, then I see why. And the businesses around here, they can afford to advertise with the event center. So they can afford to compete with the event center. So Edgecombe County, I would love to see, and this is on the council, not you, that we're given plan for, and we're very intentional. If we're gonna have a lost leader that the taxpayers are paying $3.9 million for, and one of the goals was to spur development in Edgecombe County, I would like to see that goal reached. And now that we're cutting expenses and we got scenarios to, close the Imperial Center, maybe close the Senior Center, then we really have to look at numbers and figure out what's gonna be the biggest impact. And I know Councilman Knight is waiting to speak. And, I'm gonna allow him to speak.
Allow.
No, I'm gonna stop, because in the last one, this has nothing to do with the event center. But what I'm saying is, sometimes words, I want the people, we can put on a show, but look, the words, okay, let me speak then. I take back the word allow, I was gonna stop so you can. But we have to look at the words and the actions, because we can get caught up in words and we can get caught up in $80 million in debt where we're about to be a failed city by looking at words. Those words are not gonna help our people pay their light bills and their utility bills. So we got to concentrate on actions, because fighting amongst each other is what got us at this point. This low point. So we can put on shows and performances, but we have to look at the actions. And my people in my ward and your ward are gonna be the biggest ones that's gonna feel the effect. I know, to feel the effect of these utility bills and these property taxes that you wanna raise.
Councilman, just giving everybody 2 minutes. You kind of went over. Mr. John, I want to ask you a quick question about Tri-Phase. I know you guys, I guess, running Tri-Phase at the moment.
Mhm.
So say if, like he was saying, if somebody can't afford the event center, you have a smaller church that want to rent out Tri-Phase for, can you do that or no?
Yes, I would clarify that what the council set up in that meeting, Parks and Rec has a piece in that, and then we, it's not like something we've been actively doing. So, but yes, to a degree now, I also have to be careful because I don't know we've essentially been using the parking lot. I don't know as far as how the building is set up for the fire, but have all that stuff been done yet, so I can tell people that they can start using it. Does that make sense? But, I remember in that discussion, they did talk about that.
So another quick question for Councilman Knight. So say if they rent it through you guys, they have to get the food from you guys, they can bring their own.
If they rent it through us, yes, they have to get the food.
Even if they use traffic.
Yes, because if we are doing it, then our expenses and stuff. But again, Parks and Rec, what I'm saying, has a piece in it where then they can, but that is somewhat beyond me. I think that's a conversation, maybe the manager can hash out with you. Okay. I did want to clarify on the Councilman Robinson's point. I fully see what you're saying. I just want to clarify what I meant. Those are two different things. So when I'm saying is we as the operator, our mandate is to operate the building. I don't have expenses or staff, to allocate to do that. On to your other point, yes, but that is something that typically happens, and that's what I was saying earlier. That typically happens from other organizations. Like, so where there's a handoff. So we bring the people here and then whether it's the downtown office or this group or that group and whoever they call that are responsible for that. So my point, like the general manager of any of our facilities aren't doing it. But what we did do, and we spent a lot of time on it. We have brought people in. We brought in all the tourism offices. I brought in the Edgecombe County Tourism Office and met with them. We've done a lot at times to try to help to the degree that we can. But as far as that bigger conversation of how you capitalize on that, but that's a different entity's responsibility, is what I'm saying. If that makes sense.
I just want to thank you, doing a good job, and, the plan was like, you mentioned earlier for, other amenities to be within walking distance of the event center. And this council have tried to do that through these incentives of, grants for those who were interested in opening up businesses and creating residents downtown. So hopefully our citizens would soon get on board, see the interest in both creation at Edgecombe and Nash County areas within the proximity of our downtown. I did want to say that those rates were adopted by the council, and when we started looking at that, we were looking at rates that our citizens, but we didn't want to price them out. So at any time, the council can look at those rates, see if they are compatible to, other facilities. Again, we thank you for operating the business in the way that you do. And, continue to work with our citizens because that's the reason why we do the event center. So again, I appreciate everything, all the visitors that come here. And it seems like, we have a lot of naysayers, they don't appreciate what we have until it's gone. So you don't miss your water industry well, like dry. So I just think we just be appreciative of the blessing that God has given us, that we capitalize on those blessings. Thank you.
No, I would just say that to that point, we do, I don't want to sound like that we don't, we do work hard to the degree that we can to work with the people and different groups to be able to hold their events here. We actually have a certain threshold that we just can't go below. And then when we can, we'll try to work with the other partners. And I did also to this point and what I wanted to say earlier, I do want to just report the fact, the only thing that I always try to remind people, we're not the only lost leader in town. Out across the street, I'm very interested to see what those numbers come out, as far as, I would be hard pressed to see what the revenue generated, in comparison for the X amount of years. Same thing, like I said, at the Alpha Company.
So that's not just one thing, that's all of ours. Let's be honest. We don't sit here and include every line item, but any public facility other than these. And what I want to thank you for in the team is for the leverage you already went to. So if you're paying 3 whatever, the $25 million, I think that's a very good return. It's very good to walk around where people live to get support. And I agree with Charles from the perspective that we got to be intentional about planning to grow. And it's nothing wrong with saying certain areas of our community need more infrastructure than others. We do it all the time in other places. And when we get back on our feet, which we are gonna do, we should prioritize strengthening our downtown pool. Because strong downtowns make stronger towns. And you all have become the center really, of what Rocky Mountain is known for. We appreciate that. What I would also like to say is that we can't be hypocrites around here either. So we can't say you're spending too much money and then expect you to run a loss in everything you do. So the pressure that we put on you, because it's our pressure, it's not your pressure. We're the one that is saying we want a balanced budget here. We say that. That's not David saying it or SFM saying it. That's what we say. And so anytime we want to change our philosophy about what we want the outcomes to be here, that's for us to set. I want to be real clear about that. So we can't be hypocritical or schizophrenic about our budget approach to the event center and then ensure that you do everything that all of our dreams are created. That's not happening. And the other thing I'm gonna say is when it's time to talk hotel, we better be talking hotel downtown. It makes no sense in my mind that we can have a successful, growing enterprise like this and don't think we can't have a hotel downtown. We need a hotel downtown. That's insane. I don't know any city that doesn't have a city, not a stop on a road. We need a hotel downtown or two or three.
Yes, sir. And just one comment that you made me think that I do want to add. Part of the challenge too with the businesses, and I think that is, to Dr. Robertson, to your question, there is a lack of understanding in some of the businesses when they need to be open and how they need to run their business to be able to capture our business. Sundays are a perfect example. Sundays are one of our busiest days because they all check out of the hotel at 12 o'clock. Sundays, I have thousands of people down there. Sundays, most of the businesses are closed. We had to adapt and come up with different ways to serve so that they wouldn't complain. And that's why we did a lot of the extra stuff we've done, as it relates to Sundays. And then the last thing I'll say, I fully, this, I'm not gonna let you joke about it in the company, this is a difficult, climate and project here. But my bigger things that I want to make sure I say, I expect to eat and the scrutiny that I have to get as a leader, the people who work here, and I also say that as a concern, as a challenge, they wouldn't do it if they didn't believe in the mission, especially my 5 full-time employees. They either are from here or they relocated here, after they were in college. It is not normal anywhere in our company that your food today was cooked by the person who also runs the tournaments. That was for us to save on chef's cost. She'd been cooking for the last year or so. You know, the catering and convention manager and her, they set up the parking with her. They're here cleaning and washing dishes or helping be the liaison of maintenance. That is tough. 5 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock this past Saturday, then 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock Sunday. Stayed and cleaned up all the streets to get ready for your event on Monday. Cooked all the food for the all-site catering that we have in that community college that we have it almost every week now to the end of the year. I am concerned the talent is tough. I got lucky with that, but that is not a long-term plan. But I did just want to say there are some very dedicated people here who care. I expect to get the scrutiny that I get. But we got a good team and they're loyal to the larger mission. So I just want to make sure I said that. Attack me all you want, but you know, I just want to make sure that they're, yeah.
All right, then.
So, Mr. Jordan, thank you for all you do to the staff. Even after what day they be off, I think they said like once or twice a month. I know that's a lot, but we thank you for what you do, and I thank the council, thank the citizens for coming out, thank the city. I think we did not leave it empty-handed. We leaving with some goals that we will accomplish. You know where we're going. And the path is the path and we're headed forward. So for this 2026 retreat, I want to say thank you for all that came out, all that attended, and this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Great job.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, have a good one. All right.
Yes. Well, for those who are, even at the, what I think they operate on, a lot of it. Gonna be different, and they allocate different, that's. You know, so, that's what I was saying. Yeah, yeah.